Chapter 24-28. The moment the demonic blade slashed out, Chu Yang's angelic and demonic wings flapped gently behind him. The wind howled and thunder rumbled. The world was sometimes dark and sometimes bright. Amidst the alternating light and darkness, he had already disappeared. It was as if he had merged with the wind and had completely merged with the world, leaving no trace behind. Before the demonic blade fell, the wind had arrived. Behind Ruizi, a dazzling light suddenly burst forth. It was as if a huge sun had suddenly risen behind his head. However, upon closer inspection, it was the tip of a spear that was blooming with infinite light. The spear of judgment. Fast. 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 It was extremely fast, so fast that it was unimaginable. This was the ultimate stab of an assassin. There were almost no words that could describe such an attack and such speed. At this moment, Chu Yang's figure had not even appeared, but the spear had already arrived. Kai. The spear of judgment directly pierced through the back of Ruizi's head, piercing through his entire head. Bang! Ruizi's entire head instantly exploded. He also completely disappeared, transforming into the purest essence of the world. This was just an illusion, but hidden within it was a fist-sized dark purple bead. The dark purple lightning had already dissipated from it, and the sound of thunder and lightning was loud. Oh no! Chu Yang immediately sensed the danger of the dark purple bead and thought to himself, this is bad. Fortunately, Ruizi did not know which vital point Chu Yang was going to hit in advance. He had hidden the dark purple bead in his body. Otherwise, if Chu Yang had pierced through the bead with his spear, who knew what the consequences would be at this moment? Rui Thunderbolt Bead, explode. When Ruizi's voice sounded, he had already made a response. The power of darkness formed a huge black vortex in front of him. Behind it was a barrier of light and a barrier of wind and thunder. At the same time, he used his spatial technique and directly hid in the void. He was about to escape. Rumble. The dark purple bead exploded, and a dark purple sun immediately rose. Endless power of thunder poured out, blasting a huge hole in the void. The black whirlpool exploded after devouring a certain amount of thunder energy. The light barrier, wind and thunder barrier behind it were also destroyed by the terrifying thunder energy. They only formed a small resistance, but that was enough for Chu Yang to easily escape. His speed was too fast, and his reaction was even faster. The moment he felt that something was wrong, he made the most perfect response. It was a sight to behold. Chimph, do you think you can escape? Black and white bow, impermanence arrow. Whoosh. When Ruizi's first syllable drilled into Chu Yang's ears, he immediately felt that his divine soul had already been locked onto. It was as if his soul was about to be seized and taken away. He even felt a great sharpness on his forehead. Immediately, a black arrow entered the void and was about to pierce through his forehead. Chu Yang wanted to pierce through Ruizi's head with his spear, and Ruizi wanted to shoot through his head. His reaction was lightning fast, and Ruizi's method was to predict the enemy's moves. He had planned everything in advance and was waiting to ambush. The depth of his calculations and the viciousness of his actions caused people to exclaim in admiration, but at the same time, they could not help but feel a wave of horror. This was indeed a little terrifying. In addition, Ruizi seemed to have too many treasures on him. After the demonic saber, there was the Rui Thunderbolt Bead, the black and white bow, and impermanence arrow. If the 7 fiend blood demon staff was included, the treasures on him seemed to be endless. The black impermanence arrow had the ability to travel through space, and its penetrative power was extremely strong. After locking onto the opponent's soul, it would not stop until the opponent died. Ordinary people would not be able to escape. The most frightening thing was that the black and white bow and impermanence arrow were a level higher than the demonic saber. They were comparable to an earthly sovereign level imperial weapon. Chapter 24-29. Damn it, how dare you bully me like this? Do you really think I don't have any tricks up my sleeve? The impermanence arrow rapidly enlarged in Chu Yang's eyes until only the tail of the arrow could be seen. His heart burned with anger, but he did not panic at all. Hidden in the void, outsiders could not see his tricks at all. Immediately, there was a loud rumble, and a 5-colored lightning burst out. With a whoosh, the 5-colored lightning swept across, and the impermanence arrow fell into his hand. The 5-colored divine light was the more domineering 5-colored lightning divine light. The 5-colored divine light swept through everything. With this, Chu Yang directly collected the impermanence arrow. He sneered in his heart, "Ruizi, I'll make your heart bleed later." The 5-colored lightning exploded in the void, revealing itself in front of everyone. No one understood what was happening in the depths of the void, but Ruizi suddenly realized that he had lost contact with the impermanence arrow. Oh no! While he was shocked, he also knew that something was wrong. At this moment, rolling demonic fog suddenly surged out from the void. In the blink of an eye, the demonic fog enveloped everything, including him. Behind. Then, he felt a chill on his back, especially at his vital parts, where he felt a fatal threat. He immediately knew that the bastard had turned against him and was going to take his life after surviving the crisis. This was beyond Ruizi's imagination. He had calculated deeply and even used the black and white bow and the impermanence arrow. Logically speaking, the bastard should have been injured even if he did not die. How could he have known that the other party would easily neutralize his tricks? Therefore, he was a little flustered. 9 flames of will shield. When a 5-colored lightning burst out from the demonic fog again, Ruizi did not have time to think about it at all. He instinctively used his most commonly used item, and a light shield immediately covered him, protecting him within. With a bang, a fire soared into the sky, burning the demonic fog. With a sizzling sound, it turned into rolling black smoke. At the same time, 9 fire dragons darted out and coiled around the shield. It was another treasure. This 9 flames of will shield was of the same level as the black and white bow and the impermanence arrow. This thing really has a lot of treasures. Chu Yang was extremely envious. At this moment, he had already appeared behind Ruizi with a black spear in his hand. It exuded an ancient and noble aura, and a decadent demonic sound was also emitted, confusing one's mind. The spear stabbed out with the force of a bolt of lightning. It was sharp and cold, and the energy of destruction surged and reaped all life. The spear of darkness could also be called the spear of the death god. As soon as the spear stabbed out, it devoured all the essence and life force in the area, causing the space there to suddenly collapse and form a black dot at the tip of the spear. The black dot grew bigger and bigger. It was a black hole. Ding! The tip of the spear pierced the light barrier, but unexpectedly, there was no great power. Instead, it was as if ink had been splashed on the light barrier. The light barrier immediately turned pitch black, and the pitch black darkness was still spreading rapidly. Darkness invasion. Darkness invasion. Darkness invasion. It was the most shocking thing. What? This bastard's understanding of the Tao of darkness is actually so profound. The Ruizi's expression changed, and he immediately roared, "Rui follower sword, 1000 sword slash." Clang. Clang, 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 clang. The sounds of swords were as dense as firecrackers. 1000 flying swords shot out, and sword light immediately illuminated the 9 heavens. Sword chi swept out in all directions. The sharp chi seemed to cut the void open. Even though everyone was very far away, they felt as if their souls were being cut open. Each flying sword was controlled as if it was an arm. It was as if there was a person controlling each of them. All of them flew towards Chu Yang. They besieged him, and wanted to cut him into pieces. Chapter 2430. Chu Yang was envious. Instead of being shocked, he was delighted. He liked this set of swords very much. His thoughts had also completely changed. He planned to seize as many treasures as he could before Ruizi found out. It's a pity that I can't immediately say to him, "Thank you for your help, I'm very grateful." He suddenly exerted force, and the power of wind and thunder erupted. An ear-piercing sound immediately erupted from the barrier, wantonly destroying the interior of the light barrier. The power of darkness had already sent the power of wind and thunder inside. Then, the entire spear of darkness, which was pitch black like hell, surged like a torrent, completely entering the light barrier. The spear turned into a spear of light, erupting with endless light. The light barrier was filled with darkness, and Ruizi's vision was blocked. The endless light was extremely dazzling, drowning out this part of the world. At this moment, Chu Yang used the 5-colored lightning divine ability again. Rumble. The world shook, and the 5-colored lightning flickered. Everyone thought that this was definitely caused by the clash between Chu Yang and Rui Zi, but no one knew that the set of Rui accompanying swords had already been completely absorbed by Chu Yang using his divine ability. The crisis was immediately resolved. Great art of darkness, devour the heavens and earth, devour, devour, devour. He still wasn't satisfied. Rolling demonic chi surged out, forming a dark vortex. Within it, a huge dark beast appeared, its huge mouth swallowing everything. This was just an illusion. The spear of light couldn't pierce through the 9 flames of wish barrier at all, and he didn't want to either. To him, the 9 flames of wish barrier was already his. Rumble. Under the cover of the huge dark beast, the 5-colored lightning flickered once again amidst the dazzling light. With a whoosh, it directly absorbed the 9 flames of wish barrier. How is this possible? Rui Zi was shocked, but he didn't have time to think carefully, because the spear of light had already pierced through. Sacred light blazed, illuminating eternity. A loud and resonant sound rang out, and there was even a hymn singing. An indestructible aura appeared, assimilating the darkness and turning it all into light. The demonic mist and darkness completely disappeared, and the world was dazzling. If he took this attack head-on, even Rui Zi would die. However, just as the spear was about to pierce through, a jade scepter suddenly appeared from Rui Zi's body, forming a sacred and dignified purple light canopy. A purple screen of light descended, protecting his body. Dong. When the spear of light landed on the canopy, there was a loud noise. It was as if a star had crashed down instead of a spear. It was a little strange. The purple canopy immediately radiated purple light in all directions. Multicolored clouds and auspicious clouds appeared and began to rotate. Suddenly, a tremendous repulsive force burst forth, as well as a tremendous repelling force. The spear of radiance was blocked and couldn't pierce through at all. It even broke apart inch by inch and exploded into a mass of dazzling light. He still has treasures. Chu Yang was astonished. The Rui child's defensive methods were truly astonishing. Scepter canopy. Zhuo Caichang, Liu Wu, and the others couldn't help but cry out in surprise when they saw the canopy. The Ruyi sect's patriarch Feng Bushun was also shocked. He thought to himself, Feng he had no choice but to use the Ruyi canopy. This Song Tangming is indeed extraordinary. No wonder the 5 from the Sage Monarch College accepted him as their disciple. The canopy was like a treasure cover. There was a star in the sky that was shaped like a canopy. It often covered the throne of the great emperor, so it was called a canopy. The canopy was a constellation that was shaped like a canopy. It often covered the throne of the great emperor. When the emperor went out, the canopy that covered him was also called a canopy. It was precious and auspicious. Not only was it a symbol of status, but it also blocked out the sun. Therefore, it also had a faint meaning of protection. For people of the immortal Tao, the great emperor was the immortal emperor. The canopy of the immortal emperor was naturally difficult to imagine. Who could touch it, and who could break it? Chapter 2431. Above the purple canopy, Chu Yang's great power was instantly neutralized. The Rui Zi blocked it and immediately threw out a few fist-sized dark purple beads. Rui Thunderbolt beads. Chu Yang had almost suffered a great loss because of them previously. He knew that these things were extremely shocking. Once they exploded, the explosion would be immensely powerful. If a few of them were thrown out at the same time, he would be blown to pieces. Whoosh! With a move, his figure disappeared again. After the huge explosion, he immediately rushed back. His movements were unpredictable, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the back. His shadow was everywhere in the void. Every time the angelic wings and the demonic wings flapped, storms and thunderstorms would bombard the area. During this period, the light and dark forces would attack again and again, causing the void to tremble. Chu Yang's speed was extremely fast. In a short period of time, hundreds and thousands of violent attacks bombarded the purple canopy one after another. However, The countless violent attacks were all blocked by the purple canopy. They even bounced back with great power, completely neutralizing Chu Yang's attacks. What the hell is this? Swoosh. Chu Yang retreated far away and stopped attacking. Bastard, why don't you continue? The Ruizi sneered coldly, his eyes burning with fury. Chu Yang also said coldly, is this all the so-called people of the immortal Tao can do? Can you only hide in a turtle shell? What a joke. The Ruizi did not fall for such inferior provocation at all. He retorted sarcastically, I'm just letting you be impudent so that you know what it means to be invulnerable, what it means to be futile, and what it means to despair. You can only wait for death. Idiot, the so-called invulnerability is just some kind of peerless technique. Invulnerability is still just a technique. Today, I'll give you, little friend, a good lesson. Buzz buzz buzz. The 7-fiend blood demon staff had already appeared in his hand. At the same time, he also had the black and white bow, impermanence arrow, 9 flames wish shield, demonic blade, and wish accompanying sword. The 9 flames Rui shroud enveloped Chu Yang. 1 fiend wielded the devil blade, 1 fiend wielded the black and white bow and arrow of impermanence, while the 1,000 angels wielded the Rui accompanying swords. The Ruizi seemed to have only just realized that all his treasures had been taken away by Chu Yang when he saw this. His face flushed red, and he felt as if his heart and liver had been dug out in an instant. Bastard, you deserve to die. Then, he roared, you can't control my treasure, return. He erupted with a tremendous will, communicating with his own precious artifact, wanting to take back all of his treasures. Treasure giver, there's no need to be so calculative. Later, I'll use your treasure tool to crush you. You'll definitely be happier. Chu Yang smiled. Wanting to take back the treasure that had fallen into his hands was simply a fool's dream. The reason was very simple. He had always been very good at this path, and now he was even better at it. Capture, soul slash, soul devour. The moment Xiao Chen made his move, the many treasure tools all trembled. The Ruizi could not take them back, but he could not control them either. If this continued, he would definitely emerge victorious in the end. However, he could not wait that long. Spirit power. After Chu Yang wiped away the Ruizi's soul imprint in the treasure tools, he started to intimidate the item spirits in them. His tremendous spirit power directly entered, wanting to completely control the item spirits. After obtaining the 9th generation Confucian master's inheritance, it was too easy for Xiao Chen to do this. Submit. Xiao Chen immediately controlled all the item spirits, telling them that if they did not submit, he would directly wipe out their spirituality. This made the 7-fiend blood demon staff, demonic saber, 9 flames Rui shroud, and the others submit instantly, unable to resist. Staff. Earlier, that treasure giver thing stepped on you. I'll use lightning to blast you and smash his head. Are you willing? Buzz buzz buzz. The 7-fiend blood demon staff immediately trembled and buzzed in response to Chu Yang. An astonishing baleful aura swept out, much stronger than what the Ruizi had triggered. Everyone could not help but be surprised. Chapter 2432. Chu Yang's coordination with the 7-fiend blood demon staff was far superior to Ruizi's. It was the same for the Ruizi's 9 flames Rui shield and the others. This could be said to be heaven-defying. Damn it. Ruizi gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. Artifacts like the 7-fiend blood demon staff could not display such power in his hands, but in the hands of that lowly person, they could. This was the greatest humiliation to him, and it also meant that he was far inferior to that lowly person. Son of a bitch, if I don't skin you alive, I swear I'm not human. His face was boiling hot, as if a piece of meat was being roasted over a fire, sizzling with oil. Treasure giver, you are the symbol of generosity, good luck, and wealth. Trouble, please pay attention to your image. When Chu Yang's serious voice entered his ears, Ruizi was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was trembling with anger, and his eyes were almost red. The crowd could completely understand how the Rui children felt. If they were the Rui children, they would definitely have suffered great internal injuries by now. However, Song Tangming's mouth was enough to make them jump up and down and grit their teeth. At this moment, if not for the shocking battle between Chu Yang and Rui Zi, everyone would have burst into laughter. Die! Swish! 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 In his rage, Rui Zi threw out more than 20 Rui thunderbolt beads in an instant. There was a rumbling explosion, and the void was blasted open like the earth. Dark pits appeared one after another. Fortunately, the void had the ability to heal itself. Chu Yang immediately went far away and said from afar, "Treasure giver, be more generous. Give more snacks to this uncle in the void. Otherwise, he will be too lonely." Ha ha. The gigolo Wei Xian and Xia Wanjin finally could not hold back and burst into laughter. Everyone had strange expressions as they looked at each other. They felt that Song Tangming's cheap mouth could kill. Ha ha. In another part of the Sage King College, Liu Wu also laughed loudly. Zhuo Saichang and the others were also full of smiles, but their smiles were much more restrained than Liu Wu's. As for the sect master of the Ru Yi sect, Feng Bushun's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. The faint complacency and arrogance on his face had completely disappeared. Rui Zi's face was still burning hot, and his heart was still being gnawed by shame. His twisted face was completely red, but he had already controlled his emotions and gradually calmed down. "Hey, that bastard, eat my stick. Woo woo woo." Rumble. Chu Yang's angelic wings and demonic wings flashed, and he appeared above Rui Zi in an instant. Then, he smashed down with the 7-fiend blood demon staff. The 7-fiend blood demon staff rapidly enlarged in mid-air, instantly transforming into a heavenly pillar, making the Rui child look as small as an ant in comparison. The demonic staff brazenly fell, and the Rui child was already gone. Dong! Heaven and earth shook as a purple brilliance burst out from under the devil staff. The huge devil staff was bounced up, and then the Rui canopy exploded endlessly, crazily extracting energy from Yi Zi. Whoosh! At this moment, a blood-red blade slashed down. At the same time, the black and white bow was also drawn by the demon, and the impermanence arrow was also shot over. Under the control of the wishful follower sword, 1,000 swords shot out like auroras. The air was filled with sword chi, and the sound of air breaking filled the air. An omnidirectional saturation attack, every inch of space, every angle, was locked down without a trace of space. Chapter 2433. Sun and Moon Derivation Sword. Divine picture of the 4 symbols. As he roared, 2 swords rushed out. One of them was fiery red and had mysterious sword runes all over it. Finally, it gathered on a divine sun in the middle of the sword. The other sword was silver white and also had sword runes all over it. The only difference was that it had a bright moon in the middle. As soon as the 2 swords came out, they gave birth to flying swords one after another. The sword chi was like fire burning the sky and mercury flowing down the ground. They went up against the wishful follower sword. A divine picture also floated above his head. The vermilion bird, black tortoise, azure dragon, and white tiger rushed out. The 4 symbols ignored the demonic saber and impermanence arrow and went straight for Chu Yang. "Hehe, treasure delivery boy, you're here to deliver treasures again. Thank you very much." Chu Yang's eyes lit up when he saw the sun and moon derivation sword and the divine picture of the 4 symbols. A smile gradually appeared on his face. He immediately raised his hand and struck out 2 5-colored divine lights. Swoosh! In an instant, the sun and moon derivation sword and the divine picture of the 4 symbols were taken away. The sky-burning sword chi, mercury-flowing sword chi, and the 4 symbols also disappeared in an instant. Then, in just a short moment, the sun and moon derivation sword and the 4 symbols reappeared, but they were all aimed at Rui Zi. Within a short period of time, Chu Yang had snatched 2 treasured weapons from Rui Zi's hands. While people were still in shock at the 5-colored divine light, they were even more shocked when they saw this scene. Fast, fast, fast. It was too fast. Song Tangming's speed of refining treasures was too fast. It was so fast that it was unimaginable. Could it be because of the 5-colored divine light? The 5-colored divine light could wipe out all things in the world. Who didn't know of such a famous divine light? However, No one expected Song Tangming to have mastered such a divine light. Song Tangming had hidden it too well. People finally understood how Song Tangming had taken Ruizi's treasures in an instant. The demonic mist and the power of darkness were all illusions and cover-ups. Everyone had been deceived, including the Rui child. This bastard, I never expected him to have mastered the five-colored divine light. The inner sage Yufuji couldn't help but sigh. He's really good at hiding things. Who knows, maybe this little bastard will really turn the tables one day. Zhuo Caichang and the others were also very surprised. On the other hand, the sect master of Ru Yi sect, Feng Bushun, had a constipated expression on his face. He was sullen, upset, and humiliated. He was upset, but the Ruizi was even more upset. Ruizi's misjudgment was causing him to lose more and more face. Once word got out, he would be too ashamed to face anyone. However, he was not in the mood to think about that right now. He was well aware of the power of the wishful wandering sword, the sun and moon derivation sword, and the divine picture of 4 divisions. His wishful canopy wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Although he had just blocked the demonic blade and impermanence arrow, he was certain that they would attack again. In addition, there was that bastard. Roar. The 4 images roared, shaking the mountains and rivers. They were the first to attack, followed by the wishful compliance sword and the sun and moon derivation sword, which tore through the air and completely submerged the Rui child. Ding ding ding, ding ding ding. The sounds of swords ringing were as dense as rain. The sword light was dazzling and covered everything. Ruizi's figure could no longer be seen. However, all of a sudden, the flying swords were repelled. Then, the wishful canopy spun at high speed like a machine that was overloaded. It seemed like it would explode at any moment. Although Ruizi was protected within, he had already spat out blood. Fresh blood was slowly flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Even if he managed to block such a dense and powerful attack, he had to expend a lot of energy and endure a lot of it. Hehe, treasure giver, if you don't give me any treasures, don't blame me for being impolite and beating you to death. Chapter 2434. War. Hearing this, Ruizi suddenly spat out another mouthful of blood. Chu Yang hurriedly said, "Don't be in such a hurry to die. Die after giving away the treasures." Everyone suddenly had the urge to beat this bastard up. Even if you beat him to death, the treasures on Ruizi's body would still be yours. Why do you have to do this? Die, you bastard. Defense was not the solution, so he could only attack. Ruizi's body moved, and with every step he took, a jade scepter would appear beneath his feet. The 3,650 pores on his body emitted a jade-white radiance, and a terrifying power surged within him. Whoosh! He suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of Chu Yang, directly punching out. Instantly, the void there seemed to collapse, and all the airflow was sucked in. Treasure giver, since you don't listen, I'll beat you to death. Whoosh! How could Chu Yang give Ruizi a chance? The angelic and demonic wings on his back flapped, and he disappeared in an instant. Then, the wishful follower sword, sun and moon derivation sword, divine picture of 4 divisions, demonic saber, and impermanence arrow all came together, drowning Ruizi again. After a few times, the wishful scepter canopy was riddled with holes like a broken umbrella, and it was about to be directly split into 2 halves. Ruizi's entire body was also covered in blood, as if he was made of blood. Wang. Chu Yang seized this opportunity, and directly made a ruthless move. He swung the 7 evils blood demon stick, and the stick shadows appeared one after another. Then, he smashed down 49 times in a row. It was as if 49 stars were smashing down at once. Although Ruizi was in an absolute disadvantage and was about to lose and die, there was no trace of worry or fear on his face. He smiled sinisterly and brazenly counterattacked. Similarly, in the blink of an eye, he also punched out 7 times 7, 49 times to meet the attack head-on. Each punch was unusually heavy, 49 staffs against 49 punches. If Chu Yang's 49 staffs were like meteors smashing down, then Ruizi's 49 punches were going to explode all the meteors that were falling, and would not give in at all. Both of them had their own defenses as well. Chu Yang had the 9 flames wish barrier, while Rui Zi had the wish canopy. The fist and the staff collided. Every fist and every staff was sharp against each other. They restrained each other and were evenly matched. The two of them seemed to have entered into a dynamic equilibrium. For a time, neither of them could do anything to the other. On the 50th strike, Chu Yang's sudden strike had an inexplicable flow of qi. It was ethereal and formless, as if it was an evasive one. When the staff struck out, it was as if an immortal had descended from the heavens. Everyone was momentarily dazed, thinking that it was an illusion. Rui Zi's 50th punch was also mysterious and profound. No one could describe it. It was like a stroke of the gods, bringing everything to life. It also made this punch extremely terrifying. His punch also seemed to be the evasive one, but his understanding was slightly different from Chu Yang's. Bang! The fist and staff collided once again. It was as if the great Tao that originated from the same source was colliding. An illusory scene burst forth. Flowers of the great Tao appeared and rained down from midair. The two of them went back and forth like this. Each staff was faster than the last, and each fist was faster than the last. On the 50th time, a change occurred. The 7 fiend blood demon staff smashed down again. Rui Zi suddenly felt a sense of danger. He suddenly realized that this strike was much stronger than before. This lowly bastard still has energy left. He's waiting for me to be numb before suddenly erupting, catching me off guard. His physical body is actually stronger than mine. He realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late. When the staff smashed down, his fist was directly smashed into a bloody mess. His bones and tendons were broken. Take this. Chu Yang struck down again. There were many afterimages of the staff. It was as if the 49 staffs had merged into one and directly smashed apart the damaged canopy. The great impact from the explosion directly sent Rui Zi flying. Chu Yang followed like a shadow and smashed down with the staff again. Boom! With a loud bang, Rui Zi's lower abdomen was smashed by the staff. He spat out a mouthful of blood. It was as if he was about to be smashed into two. His internal organs churned as he was smashed into the ground, drowned in dust. Go to hell! Chu Yang was unforgiving. He was about to go over and take Rui Zi's life when he suddenly felt a sense of danger. Chapter 24:35. The Rui Zi was difficult to deal with. The chance to kill him was right before his eyes, but Chu Yang could only give up. He was very unwilling to accept this. Just what is it that makes me feel such a great sense of danger? And just what is that high level and profound energy? Chu Yang stopped in his tracks and narrowed his eyes. He stared intently at the spot where Rui Zi was. Dust was still swirling in the air. Before it had completely settled down, all the dust that had been blown up by the explosion suddenly stopped in midair. They no longer fell down. Instead, they floated in midair like dust in the air. The area seemed to be affected by something profound. There was no longer any gravity there. It was in a strange state. Afterwards, the floating dust suddenly sank down strangely, like a huge boulder falling down. It happened in the blink of an eye, but there was no sound at all. Afterwards, dense mist rose up, drifting and surging. It underwent a myriad of changes. Rays of light surged out from within, and auspicious clouds appeared. Afterwards, 2 ginkgo trees suddenly emerged from the mist, one male and one female. They stood opposite each other, exuding a lustrous glow. It made people feel blissful and peaceful. The 2 ginkgo trees seemed to be a profound door, or the entrance to a paradise. As soon as he opened it, he saw jagged rocks of strange shapes. It was a dazzling sight, making it even more gorgeous. Stalagmites, stone curtains were imprinted into his eyes. They were incomparably beautiful. Stone birds, stone beasts, stone monkeys, and stone Buddhas were vivid and lifelike. The crystalline stone flowers and stone fruits were like real fruits, making people drool with desire. Further in the east, a mountain suddenly came into view. The peak of the mountain was lofty, hanging in all directions. Purple chi rolled in from the east and enveloped the mountain. Then, it gathered in the cave halfway up the mountain. Amidst the dense fog, the scene came to an abrupt end. When Chu Yang saw this, his heart trembled. He could not help but think of a few words: paradise. Paradise was immortality, an immortal realm. It was a phenomenon that the way of immortality left an extremely deep impression on people. The emptiness of the sky, the cave of the mountain, and the room of the man. The emptiness in the mountainside is called the dongting, the emptiness in the head is called the bridal chamber. Therefore, the reverend is in the sky, in the mountains, in the people, in the void. Using millet to contain Penglai mountain, including Liuhe, heaven and earth cannot contain him. In the immortal's grotto heaven, there is nothing in existence, there is something out of nothing, there is something small in the big, and there is something big in the small. The scene that appeared in the dense fog was a blessed land, a fairyland, and in the deepest part of it was a paradise. Clearly, after Ruizi was no match for Chu Yang, he had used his most essential thing, but it was unknown what it was exactly. It looks like the immortals of the immortal epoch are indeed extraordinary, extremely startling. Chu Yang's heart became more solemn. Just as these thoughts flashed through his mind, all the scenes disappeared. Only a cloud of purple gas was left, enveloping the big pit on the ground. Then, the purple gas shrunk inwards, revealing the scene inside. A person also floated out of the big pit. Ruizi. At this moment, there was no joy, sorrow, or anger in Ruizi's eyes. They were as calm as water, and his aura was elegant and extraordinary. He stood on two purple auspicious clouds, and the mysterious phenomenon of purple gas coming from the east appeared behind him. Within each of his eyes, a purple line floated out from each of his pupils. It was as if they were the extremely soft tentacles of some kind of animal. Buzz. As Ruizi's emotions changed abruptly and he suddenly stared at Chu Yang, the tranquility instantly shattered and disappeared without a trace. Instead, it turned into endless coldness. It was as if the world had frozen over in an instant. Chapter 2436. This is immortal qi. You have to be careful. Shi Danfeng sent a mental voice projection. When Chu Yang heard this, he could not help trembling. He exclaimed in his heart, "Immortal qi?" Xiao Chen did not find this to be too obvious. However, Shi Danfeng was telling him everything she knew. Immortal qi, the so-called immortal qi, in the immortal epoch, was the embodiment of a cultivator's potential and talent to become an immortal. Anyone who could cultivate immortal qi was a person with the potential to become an immortal. In the future, they could ascend and become immortal. During the immortal epoch, it was difficult to seek the Tao and even harder to become an immortal. Even during such an era, only a few people could cultivate immortal qi. Furthermore, these few people were the best. That was to say, Ruizi was a genius even during the immortal epoch. This allowed Chu Yang to instantly understand why Ruizi was so arrogant. He did have the qualifications. As for the use of immortal qi, naturally, it was simple. There was a difference between immortal and mortal. People who cultivated immortal qi had an immortal fate and were close to immortal, completely breaking away from being mortal. When Chu Yang faced Ruizi, he had a similar feeling. However, it was not that there was a difference between immortal and mortal. Instead, it was, Xiao Chen was just a person who had just started practicing martial arts. However, Ruizi had already cultivated veritable energy, a cultivator with small accomplishments. There was already a huge chasm between the two of them. Xiao Chen was still at one end of the chasm, but Ruizi had already crossed it, heading to a wider and brand new world. This is not an ordinary gap. Just as the haze in Chu Yang's heart became the thickest, a voice entered his ears. "Bumpkin, someone told you that this is immortal qi, right?" Buzz. Xiao Chen's mind immediately buzzed. He exclaimed in shock, mental voice projection. To think that this thing can actually capture it. Xiao Chen was greatly shocked. To think that Ruizi could capture Shi Danfeng's mental voice projection. How shocking was this? Was this so-called immortal qi really that shocking? Immortal qi. Xiao Chen felt incredibly shocked. When the crowd heard this, they also exploded. Their expressions changed, and they could not help exclaiming, "Immortal qi! Could it be that Ruizi is already an immortal?" Immortals. Grand emperors are inferior to immortals. Many people couldn't utter a single word after hearing this analogy. Only fear and panic were left. Immortal? Could it be that Ruizi has really become an immortal? If he is an immortal, then who can be his opponent? Even if he is not an immortal now, he will definitely be an immortal in the future. The one standing before us now is very likely to be an immortal in the future. The two words immortal chi drilled into people's ears like a torpedo exploding in a school of fish. For a moment, the explosion made many people show white bellies. Although many people did not know much about immortal chi, they knew that immortals were shockingly powerful. Therefore, there was no one who could remain calm, and no one could remain calm. This was truly too shocking. The Rui child was far beyond his imagination. Country bumpkin, do you know the difference now? The Ruizi spoke coldly and arrogantly. Everyone's panicked appearance made him even more arrogant. The shame from before had disappeared without a trace. At this moment, all that was left was arrogance and disdain. There was only coldness and killing intent. Every word that came out of his mouth was either as cold as ice or as sharp as a blade. There is a difference between immortals and mortals. Do you understand? The Ruizi's disdain for Chu Yang increased, and he became even more sarcastic and unkind. He constantly revealed a sense of complacency. Chu Yang coldly watched all of this. Although he was shocked, he did not panic. The immortal Qi was indeed shocking, but this was no longer the immortal epoch, but another epoch. If this was the immortal epoch, he believed that he would definitely not be inferior to the Ruizi. Chapter 2437. You're just a destitute person, using a chicken feather as a token of authority. Only you can do that. Chu Yang disdained to retort. If a starving camel was bigger than a horse in the immortal epoch, then he wanted to see how big this starving camel was. Ruizi clearly understood what he meant. At that moment, the air buzzed and trembled. Ruizi's pupils were almost as sharp as blades. They were fierce and vicious. The two purple lines in his pupils fluttered violently, as if they had been elongated at that moment. Country bumpkin, I'll teach you respect today. Ruizi bent his hand and hooked it at Chu Yang. Didn't you want to kill me? Come on. Chu Yang did not reply. To be safe, he directly used the Destiny Twins to isolate Ruizi's sharp senses. Then, he disappeared into the void. After his original body and the heavenly spirit world clone quickly switched places, he appeared again. What, country bumpkin, you don't dare? Ruizi was arrogant. Although he did not understand, he did not care. He sneered and said, you can only use that sharp mouth of yours to hold on. Later, I'll tear that cheap mouth of yours, and then I'll tear you apart. The moment he mentioned this, everyone could not help but think of the words Chu Yang had said to Ruizi when he was mocking him. The corners of their mouths twitched involuntarily. That mouth was indeed a despicable one. It was almost capable of killing someone. At this moment, the pretty boy Wei Xian and Xia Wanjin could not laugh. They looked at the two people in the field with serious expressions, revealing worried expressions. As for Shi Danfeng, she seemed to have foreseen this scene from the beginning. When everything happened, she was not that anxious or worried because everything seemed to be under her control. Haha. Chu Yang swept his gaze across the field and chuckled in his trademark way. You're a fast learner, aren't you? Your mouth can be cheap and poisonous, but I'll teach you a good lesson. Don't resent anyone, because only then can you enjoy the wonderful expressions of your opponents when you're cheap. Just like just now, your expression left a deep impression. When the voice entered Ruizi's ears, he felt as if a blade had stabbed into his heart. His face suddenly contorted and became ferocious. However, the two purple lines floating in his eyes were extremely cool, completely negating all his ugliness. Country bumpkin, if I didn't deliberately hide my strength, do you think you would have a chance? The Rui child roared at the top of its lungs. However, after venting, although he was still extremely angry, he was able to control himself. He clenched his teeth and said, the emperor took the bait. In order to not expose his identity, he humiliated the beggar. However, this beggar doesn't know fear. After knowing the emperor's identity, He is still so proud of himself. He really doesn't know what kind of torture it is to be cut into pieces, and what kind of suffering is to beg for death. After a pause, he continued sinisterly, I'll definitely make you regret it. Kneel down and beg me, and I'll give you a quick death. TSK. Chu Yang was very scornful. He said disdainfully, You call yourself the emperor? He pointed directly at the Ruizi. With your current conduct, you're not worthy of comparing yourself to the emperor. You're just a malicious spirit at most. What are you boasting about? Watch how I deal with a malicious spirit like you today. The Ruizi went crazy. The void trembled, and the airflow was turbulent. His long hair stood up straight towards the sky, as if someone was pulling on his hair. He was furious, and his condition was not good, but he had not made a move yet. It had to be said that this was a good habit, but Chu Yang took advantage of it and mocked him. Chapter 2438. You, on the other hand, are acting crazy over there. It's really surprising. This celestial venerable has a very deep impression of a weirdo like you. I'm cheering for you. Such mocking words made everyone speechless. They also felt that Ruizi was strange. Look at how angry he is. Why is he still acting like a bird? Hurry up and chop him up. People also looked down on Ruizi. Ruizi, are you stupid, or are you sick? You know that Song Deming's mouth is a firecracker, yet you still do this with him. Aren't you sending your face over to be trampled on? Haha. Suddenly, Ruizi looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. He looked at Chu Yang with disdain. Country bumpkin, why do you keep trying to anger me? The laughter on his face turned into mockery. It was as if he was saying, Do you think I'm a complete fool? Chu Yang felt a little strange. Ruizi's reaction was indeed beyond his expectations. Sorry. Ruizi was still angry, but it had weakened a lot. He sneered. Let me tell you a very bad news. I have a habit. I will never do anything when I'm angry. No matter how bad my opponents are, they won't good. For example, you. Ruizi pointed at Chu Yang. His finger seemed to want to poke into Chu Yang's eye socket. Chu Yang was surprised by this explanation. Everyone was surprised too. That's a good habit. Chu Yang had to re-evaluate the pair in front of him. Indeed, Chu Yang had indeed treated Ruizi as a fool, a super big fool. This is indeed a good habit. I won't deny it. Ruizi's words suddenly became interesting. Everyone's eyes couldn't help but bulge. Was this still Ruizi? Was this the Ruizi they saw before? However, the few people who came with Ruizi didn't say anything. They weren't surprised at all. They just smiled faintly. Sigh, you're really not a fool? Chu Yang had no choice but to admit this reality. Then he said, You're actually very clear-headed, but why do you pretend to not be muddlehead at this point? He paused. After thinking for a bit, he seemed to understand and suddenly said, You don't want to wake up. At such a young age, one should have the same mentality. If one is too clear-headed, one's life will be too unconsciously. Especially since you are an immortal cultivator. Before you become an immortal, you should lust after the secular world. Therefore, one should be jealous of a woman. One should be jealous of a woman. Only then will one's life be happy. In addition, young people should work hard to move forward, but you are too outstanding, so why do you need to work hard? Chu Yang laughed. Can't you see that I've already thrown everyone else off the street? No matter how hard I work, they won't even be able to eat my dust. How am I supposed to play with this marshal? Is my life going to be as lonely as snow from now on? Crazy. This was crazy. Everyone felt uncomfortable when they heard this. This bastard was bullying them too much. However, they didn't know if this bastard Chu Yang was talking about him or Ruizi. Ruizi's eyes revealed a strange expression. Seeing him like this, Chu Yang knew that his guess was right. Country bumpkin, let's be friends. Everyone was stunned by Chu Yang's sudden words. Ruizi was also stunned. His eyes widened like copper bells. Country bumpkin, are you very surprised? Chu Yang laughed complacently. Then, he boasted, you should indeed be surprised. For people like me, Every move of mine is traceless and unpredictable. So, it's normal that you wouldn't think of it. He rubbed his chin and added, yes, that's right. Half a moment ago, the birdman in front of me was still an enemy, fighting to the death. But in the next moment, you want to be friends. Only I can do something like jumping out of the ordinary and creating history. A country bumpkin like you can't do it, waha. Chapter 2439. This bitch. The pretty boy Wei Xian and Xia Wanjin were indeed greatly surprised. As for Chu Yang, this bitch, he was really unconstrained. Even though they were kindred spirits, they couldn't understand him at all. Where does your confidence come from? Rui Zi sneered after his surprise. Country bumpkin, haven't you noticed that I really want to kill you now? What a joke. If you don't want to kill me, wouldn't it be meaningless for me to do this? Chu Yang looked at Rui Zi and smiled. I thought you would be curious about the reason, but it seems like you're not an interesting person. As he spoke, he pointed at Rui Zi and said, Country bumpkin, you're too weak. You don't have the right to pretend to be ignorant. Learn to be an interesting person first. Waraha, I'm indeed the only one in this world who can pretend to be ignorant and float in a muddle-headed state. In the end, he put his hands on his hips again and laughed wildly. Rui Zi didn't laugh. His expression became even colder, and his killing intent became even stronger. This was because he was jealous at this moment. I'm indeed curious now, he said coldly. Country bumpkin, tell me the reason why you want to be friends with me. Can you defeat the killing intent in my heart? Chu Yang didn't care at all. He smiled happily and said, you shouldn't be too bad, right? Of course I'm not bad. Rui Zi said proudly. A woman who can make you infatuated with her shouldn't be too bad. Rui Zi already understood the reason and couldn't help but be stunned. Chu Yang smiled even more happily. Thank you for telling me how outstanding she is. After saying this to Rui Zi, he immediately looked at Shi Danfeng affectionately. Wife, I'll love you for 10,000 years. Swoosh. Immediately, everyone's gazes turned to Shi Danfeng. Shi Danfeng was caught off guard, and an inexplicable fire burned on her. That inexplicable rascal was right in front of everyone, and he was acting so shamelessly. She was at a loss, and her face was red with embarrassment. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen your husband express his love for his wife? Chu Yang scolded everyone carelessly. If you dare to pressure my wife again, I won't forgive you if I have to kneel on a washboard when I go back. The crowd was in disarray. Were they the ones who embarrassed the talented girl, or was it this shameless thing that actually blamed them? Of course, that was not all. They also had a great understanding of Chu Yang. Rui Zi pretending to be unconscious was already very arrogant, but Chu Yang was even more arrogant. Because Chu Yang was even more excessive. He was frivolous, and he laughed and cursed wantonly without restraint. He took everything in the world seriously, so he didn't care in the slightest about the ridicule, misunderstanding, hostility, and so on of others. In short, you can do whatever you want. It has nothing to do with me. Hurry up and get out of my way. Don't interfere with my gaming life. Everyone could tell, and Rui Zi could naturally tell as well. He felt even more upset. There was actually someone in the world who lived even more unbridled and exciting than him. You're crazy enough. SOSO, third in the world. Only third place. There's no such person in the first and second places. I'm just trying to make it rhyme. Do you understand? It's such a pity for such a person to die. Rui Zi's voice became colder. You don't have the right to be arrogant in front of me. Also, do you have any last words before you die? Impudent. Chu Yang suddenly roared and jabbed Rui Zi angrily. Country bumpkin, it's your fortune that I want to be friends with you. You actually dare to disobey me. You're really stupid and audacious. How casual was that? So what if his opponent was Rui Zi? How could he make him afraid? Chapter 2440. How dare you look down on me? Rui Zi's tone was low and angry. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and the two purple lines were also floating. Chu Yang was a little envious. He immediately roared, "Hey, that thing. What's up with that purple line? Who allowed you to be so cool? Did you report it to me? Chu Yang was a little dazzled by the purple line in his eyes. You're still so mocking and looking down on me. Ruizi revealed his white teeth like the sharp teeth of a man-eating beast. He smiled sinisterly. Country bumpkin, when I'm about to beat you to death, I'll naturally tell you. Country bumpkin, you're still not convinced. Chu Yang roared again. If you're not convinced, I'll beat you until you are. Country bumpkin, take this. Chu Yang was naturally unhappy with Ruizi's arrogance and killing intent, but he had to stall for time. Of course, he did not have to be friends with Ruizi. He was just doing it on a whim. However, it was better to have more friends than enemies. There was no harm in killing him. There were plenty of people in the world who could make friends. Of course, he was also confident that this was not just a clone of his. He was using it to test Ruizi and see how strong he had become after using immortal qi. However, when he said that, Zhuo Saichang and the others were already laughing and joking. Whoosh! With the seven evils blood demon staff in his hand, Chu Yang's figure moved and immediately disappeared into the void. Ruizi, on the other hand, was completely unmoved. He stood there motionlessly. In the next moment, Chu Yang appeared behind Ruizi and swung the seven fiend blood demon staff down. When the bloody staff fell, it quickly enlarged. In an instant, it was like a heavenly pillar. A murderous aura swept through the world, completely dyeing the void red. The staff was like the sky, and when it fell, it was as if the sky had collapsed. Ruizi still did not move. Like a small stone, he was directly smashed into powder and completely disappeared. However, the staff stopped in midair and did not fall. Chu Yang's staff smashed down. It was as if he had thrown a punch with all his strength, but it hit empty air. It was only an afterimage of Ruizi. Ruizi was extremely fast and had already escaped. Country bumpkin, you are too slow. The voice came from behind Chu Yang. Ruizi. It was unknown when he had arrived behind Chu Yang, but he did not make a move. If he made a move, even if he couldn't kill Chu Yang, he would definitely be able to severely injure Chu Yang. What a fast speed. Compared to him, I'm like a snail. Although Chu Yang was extremely shocked, his movements were not slow at all. With a whoosh, he once again entered the void and disappeared. Then, with the same action, he appeared behind Ruizi again, and the staff came crashing down like the heavens. This time around, Ruizi did not dodge. Instead, he extended his palm to receive the incoming attack. With a bang, the large rod that was like a heavenly pillar smashed into the palm that was so small that it could be ignored. Then, it bounced back in an extremely strange manner, like a small stone smashing into a wall. Did you not eat? You are not even as strong as a chicken. Ruizi suddenly exerted his strength, and the seven evils blood demon staff instantly returned to its original state. Then, he looked at Chu Yang with extreme disdain. Not only has your speed increased, but your strength has also increased tremendously. Is immortal qi that shocking? Whoosh! Ruizi teased, allowing Chu Yang to do whatever he wanted. Naturally, Chu Yang would not hold back. This time, he did not use the space technique. Instead, he took a step forward with the 5 elements chaotic steps. Immediately, one after another, Chu Yang appeared. They were so densely packed that it was as if they filled up the void. It was impossible to tell which one was the real one. However, Ruizi suddenly moved. He reached out his hand and directly grabbed Chu Yang by the neck, lifting him up like a chicken. You dare to use such insignificant skills to embarrass yourself. Chapter 2441. The State of an Immortal. Chu Yang's pupils suddenly shrank. This so-called state of an immortal allowed Ruizi's speed, strength, and senses to increase to a terrifying level, so much so that it was somewhat unimaginable. The state of an immortal is to use immortal qi as a guide to step into the forbidden zone of the immortals. As for the effect, you should have felt it. You and I are different from immortals and mortals. Ruizi clutched Chu Yang's neck and revealed his white teeth once again. He smiled sinisterly and said, I've said before that when I tell you all this, you'll be dying soon. Do you have any last words now? The state of an immortal? Interesting. In midair, The many Chu Yangs spoke at the same time. Their voices overlapped, causing everyone to be surprised and astonished. Even Rui Zi was taken aback. However, he soon relaxed completely because he had already caught hold of Chu Yang's real body. I'm a little puzzled. You still dare to be impudent in front of me at this time? Rui Zi's tone was sharp, but there was also some doubt in it. Ha ha. Many Chu Yangs laughed out loud once again. Their unbridled laughter overlapped and reverberated in the world. It was extremely loud and clear. You bastard, I've changed my mind. After laughing loudly, Chu Yang said, I've always been the one who grabbed others by the neck and lifted them up. I've never been grabbed by the neck and lifted up. You're dead meat. Me. Rui Zi snorted coldly and mocked, you're about to die. I really don't know where you get the confidence to say such shameless words. Do you think that I'll be scared by your bravado? After a pause, he suddenly thought of something, and his face suddenly turned gloomy. Then, his expression was filled with endless disdain. Oh, I understand. You're so unbridled because of the seniors of the Sage Monarch Academy, right? You've had such a backing from the beginning. Why would you have any scruples? And this is your so-called ability, haha. Rui Zi laughed angrily, his laughter filled with extreme contempt. He had originally admired Chu Yang, and was even jealous of him. But now that he thought about it, it was simply a joke. When everyone heard this, their opinion of Chu Yang suddenly changed. Chu Yang was no different from a spoiled brat who relied on others to be presumptuous. What kind of ability was that? Their expressions couldn't help but reveal looks of disdain. The result of the battle between Rui Zi and Chu Yang was already decided. Zhuo Saichang, Liu Wu, and the others saw everything clearly. Zhuo Saichang cupped his fists and said to Feng Bushun, Brother Feng, sorry to trouble you. Brothers were, you're too polite. Feng Bushun politely returned the greeting. He did not show any expression that would displease Zhuo Saichang and the others. It was as if he had already become friends with Zhuo Saichang and the others. The general idea was the same. When Chu Yang said that he wanted to make friends with the Ruyi sect, such a suggestion surprised Zhuo Saichang and the others, but they also sighed. Dealing with the relationship with the Ruyi sect was so simple, harmony was the most important. They had studied for their entire lives for nothing. Therefore, Zhuo Saichang immediately made the suggestion, and Feng Bushun immediately agreed. The Ruyi sect naturally wanted to build a good relationship with the Sage Monarch Academy. The reason was simple. The Sage Monarch Academy was considered a colossus in the middle ground. If the Ruyi sect could build a good relationship with the Sage Monarch Academy, the advantages outweighed the disadvantages. Moreover, Chu Yang was indeed extraordinary. As for the conflict between him and the Ruyi, it should not be a problem to resolve it. Unfortunately, the final result was that Chu Yang seemed to be much worse than expected. However, this did not prevent the Sage Monarch Academy from building a good relationship with the Ruyi sect. Song Tangming of your institute is much more magnanimous than my inferior disciple. Feng Bushun was speaking the truth. Then he continued, I'll be back soon. Chapter 2442. Junior Sister Xiaoxiang, this is also why you were not worried from the start to the end, right? After Rui Zi finished mocking Chu Yang, he aimed his firepower at Shi Danfeng. Shi Danfeng's expression did not change at all. She said indifferently, you underestimate him too much. Huh. Rui Zi felt extremely surprised. Everyone was surprised as well. Don't you think that it is too easy? Shi Danfeng continued, he already knows that you used immortal qi. Did he not take any precautions? Although I do not know what he is planning or what he is relying on, I am sure that you are getting cocky too early. Haha. My wife understands me. Before Rui Zi could speak, Chu Yang's voice rang out. He was not elsewhere but right beside Shi Danfeng. When Chu Yang appeared, Shi Danfeng was caught off guard. So, he held Shi Danfeng in his arms, and openly defiled her. Shi Danfeng bit him fiercely, but he didn't let go. Xiao Chen's appearance stunned everyone, shocking them. Naturally, Xiao Chen found a way to deal with this. Simply put, Rui Zi was just using the Immortal Epoch's advantage to bully Xiao Chen. Immortal qi was the condensed essence of the immortal epoch. At the very least, it was one of the essences. After figuring this out, dealing with Ruizi's immortal qi was not that difficult. Did Xiao Chen not have it? Of course, Chu Yang had it. He even had 2 epochs worth of civilizations. Not mentioning the civilizations of his previous life, as it was difficult to capture something like immortal qi. However, the Confucian epoch was different. He even obtained the most shocking, horrifying, and inconceivable great assimilation scripture of the Confucian epoch. However, Xiao Chen did not want to reveal the great assimilation scripture. Hence, he kept teasing and playing pranks to stall for time, giving him more time to observe Ruizi and think of countermeasures. The immortal epoch had immortal qi. What did the Confucian epoch have? Immortal qi could trigger the immortal state. What could the Confucian epoch trigger? Comparing the two, the Confucian epoch's literary qi was not as good as immortal qi. After thinking about it, Xiao Chen felt that there was only righteous qi and overwhelming righteous qi. Overwhelming righteous qi to trigger the Confucian state. If that didn't work, he would just use the Great Assimilation Scripture and leave the Sage Monarch Academy. He would change his identity again, and no one would be able to find him. It's called qi, it's extremely big and strong. It's straight and harmless, and it's stuffed between heaven and earth. It is qi, matching righteousness and Tao. It is not discouragement. It was born from the accumulation of righteousness, not obtained through righteousness. If one does not have a humble heart, one will be discouraged. Chu Yang began to recite. It was not Wen Tianxiang's Song of Righteousness, but Mencius's explanation and definition of the Son of Hauran. He wanted to use this opportunity to activate the Saint King mysterious realm and form the Grand Righteous Qi to activate the state of Confucianism. The Sage King College was a geographical advantage. If he didn't use it, he would be a fool. Live widely under the heavens, establish the right position under the heavens, and walk the great path under the heavens. If you succeed, you will follow the people. If you fail, you will walk the path alone. Don't be corrupted by riches and honor. Don't be swayed by poverty. Don't be subdued by might. This is what a real man is. As he recited, Ruizi had already thrown away Chu Yang's heavenly soul world clone. His expression was cold, but he didn't make a move. He wanted to see how capable Chu Yang was. Of course, Ruizi was confident. Suddenly, Chu Yang's voice became louder. It was like the voice of the great Tao of heaven and earth, but it wasn't his own doing. It was because of some kind of power. Immediately, the Sage Monarch mysterious realm suddenly lit up without a sound. It was like a sacred sun. Beams of incandescent sacred light shone out, instantly illuminating the heavens and earth. Set a heart for heaven and earth, set a life for the people, inherit the lost knowledge of the past saints, and establish peace for all ages. Chapter 2443. The Sage Monarch mystic realm, a relic left behind from the Confucian era, was completely activated at this moment. Zhuo Caichang and the others turned pale with fright. They were so excited that they trembled. The Sage Monarch Academy fell into great shock and ecstasy. The people who were watching the battle between Chu Yang and Ruizi felt their hearts throbbing at the sight of this strange turn of events. In a short period of time, the holy light completely enveloped the world. Everyone temporarily lost their vision and could not see anything, but they still had their senses. They felt a kind of qi. That kind of qi was the greatest and strongest. It filled all directions and was omnipresent. That kind of qi had righteousness and the Tao as its foundation. It was righteous and bright, and it was in harmony with the world. It was the righteous path of the world and the backbone of the world. This was only the perception of the people. Chu Yang knew it more clearly and deeply. The righteous qi was a kind of perceptual power. It was a kind of spiritual power that was born from one's heart. It was one's will, one's moral heart. It was an internal transcendence, not an external transcendence. It was a kind of sincere cultivation of one's moral character. In the end, it would turn into one with the world. Chu Yang had grasped the Great Harmony Sutra and left his own deep mark in the Sage Monarch mystic realm. Otherwise, It would be impossible to activate it. Rumble. Silently, a great power rose from the Sage Monarch Academy and entered the world. Then, it poured down from the 9 heavens and into Chu Yang's body. Immediately, in Chu Yang's two-dimensional coordinates, the embryonic world of the Confucian path evolved further. At the same time, on his body, a brand new rule of the Confucian path was also born crazily, weaving on his body. The most shocking thing was that from the deepest part of his heart, a world of the Confucian path seemed to be born. Waves of righteous power surged out and fused with his body. With a pop, Chu Yang heard an inexplicable sound. Then, he felt his body suddenly break through a thin membrane. Then, he seemed to have stepped into a mysterious world, into the world of the Confucian path, into the era of the Confucian path. In an instant, his perception expanded infinitely, seeming to be able to cross the river of time and space to sense everything in the Confucian epoch. His strength also seemed to rise infinitely, as if all the strength of the Confucian epoch had poured into his body. The Rui child's immortal state should be roughly like this, right? This was truly a wondrous and intoxicating feeling. Chu Yang fell into it and found it hard to extricate himself. He felt as if he had become the Epoch Lord of the Confucian path. After an unknown amount of time, the strange phenomenon disappeared. When people could see again, every pair of eyes immediately stared at Chu Yang. The Rui seed was even more so. Shi Danfeng, Wei Xian, Xia Wanjin, and Zhuo Caichang were all like this. To be more precise, they were more concerned about it. Chu Yang had a closer relationship with them, and he had also triggered the Sage King mystic realm. Every one of them was of great concern to them. In mid-air, Chu Yang did not seem to be any different from before. He did not seem to have any cultivation and was like a scholar, but he did not have a sloppy temperament. He was elegant, knowledgeable, mature, and steady. He was also extremely calm. When people who were annoyed looked at him, they seemed to be able to calm down immediately. 2 tentacle-like lines floated out of his pupils. It was impossible to tell what color they were. There was also a faint image in them, but it could not be seen clearly. It seemed to be a painting of mountains and rivers, a spring river, a moonlit night, or a vast expanse of mountains and rivers. He was clearly like the Rui child. He had also entered a certain state, the Confucian state. This thing, is immortal Qi so amazing? Is the immortal state so amazing? In the silence, Chu Yang opened his mouth and broke the silence. The calmness in everyone's hearts was immediately shattered. Immediately, the world turned upside down. If you don't show off, then I'll kill you. Boom. Chapter 2444. Chu Yang, who was in the state of Confucianism, was filled with righteousness and righteousness. Evil spirits and monsters seemed to be immediately turned into ashes when they encountered him. The might of his body was fearsome, like an emperor whose anger would cause rivers of blood to flow and the people to be plunged into misery and suffering. However, he was more like a wise scholar who was in charge of the imperial court. With a smile, he could turn ores into ashes and smoke. He could also create a flourishing age where flowers were like brocade and fire was like oil being poured on. Apart from his pupils, there were 2 rays of light drifting out from his eyes like tentacles. One of his eyes seemed to be a flourishing age where the world was at peace. The other seemed to be a chaotic age where the people were dying. If he was the emperor, Rui Zi would be a criminal. If he was the prime minister who ruled the world, Rui Zi would be a national traitor. I represent the moon to destroy you. This was supposed to be a matter of life and death. At this critical juncture, it was extremely austere. However, when Chu Yang suddenly said this, it immediately threw everything into chaos. The matter of life and death seemed to have become a child's game. The crowd was immediately in an uproar. This was not the first time this had happened. Many people felt as if there were 10,000 horses galloping through their hearts. They were so upset that they almost cursed out loud and completely activated the 3-character classic. This was not what they had been waiting for. Song Tangming, could you be a little more serious? Haha, I can sense that you're all caught off guard and all kinds of stupefaction, but why aren't you cursing out loud? So you know this too. Many people could not help but grit their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. At the same time, from such impudence, they could see that Song Deming did not take Ruizi seriously at all. Whoosh! While many people were having mixed thoughts, they were caught off guard again. Chu Yang suddenly moved. This time, he did not use spatial techniques. He shot straight at Ruizi like a bolt of lightning. He was like a sun flying rapidly above the firmament. Everywhere he passed, a pure and holy belt of light was formed. There was not a single impurity in the belt of light, nor his figure. It was extremely pure. In the blink of an eye, he saw a child who was just starting out, shaking his head. Then the child became a teenager, a young man, a man in the prime of his life. His head was pierced by a beam, and he studied hard. He became an elementary scholar, a high scholar, and then an official. He entered the imperial court and ruled the world. The scene that appeared in the Belt of Light was like the whole process of a scholar cultivating his body, managing his family, and ruling the country. It was the life that all scholars hoped for. In the end, the Belt of Light even showed the evolution of Confucianism, as if the entire epoch of Confucianism was shown. Even though the person was unreliable, the scene he created was extremely shocking, making people lose their minds. After Chu Yang entered the state of Confucianism, Ruizi became completely mute. His face was solemn and his brows were tightly furrowed. He seemed to have realized that he would definitely lose, but he was unwilling to accept it. Kill. Whoosh. He also shot out like lightning. Purple chi surged and formed a belt of light, a purple belt of light. The mysterious phenomenon of purple chi coming from the east appeared. Then, the immortal epoch seemed to spread out. This was a clash between Confucian and immortal, a clash between the Confucian epoch and the immortal epoch. Who would win and who would lose? Everyone didn't even blink. They were all paying close attention and waiting. The pure and holy belt of light and the purple belt of light clashed silently. There were no fluctuations. It was like two beams of light met, like two pieces of cloth joining together. It was strange and majestic. After a while, the pure and holy belt of light was like a white river. It flowed along the purple river and surged over. All the purple belts of light quickly disappeared, turning into pure and holy belts of light. Boom. Chapter 24:45. The latter was even faster, and people could not see his face, so they could not determine who he was. All they could see was a large DA character smashing out, sending the former flying and crashing into the ground. Boom. The ground shook violently, and loud rumbling sounds reverberated in all directions. At this time, a voice rang out. Do you recognize the large DA character? The movement seemed to be faster than the sound. After it ended, the voice entered people's ears, but no one knew if that was the case. However, they finally saw who was who. The former was Ruizi, and the latter was Song Tangming. Ruizi was no match for Song Tangming and was sent flying. This result was in line with everyone's expectations, but their hearts were still in a perilous situation, as if heaven and earth were being turned upside down. Moreover, what kind of method was Song Tangming using? Who here did not recognize the large DA character? How could Ruizi not recognize the DA character? Was this a joke, or a humiliation? Why did this DA character have such great power? With a whoosh, Ruizi flew out from the ground. He was like a flying sword, extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he was suspended in mid-air. At this time, people saw that his chest had caved in, and he was wrapped in purple chi. Under the effect of the purple chi, his injuries were healed in the blink of an eye, and he was as good as new. It was shocking. 2 questions. Chu Yang was not in a hurry to make a move in mid-air. His right fist was wrapped in a light barrier, as if he was holding a world in his hand. He raised 2 fingers with his left hand. Do you think I'm slow? Was this a competition of speed? The collision of light ribbons was a competition of speed. Everyone finally caught a glimpse of what was going on, and a rich imagination began to unfold in their minds. Ruizi's expression was dark, and his eyes flickered. The purple light that floated out of his pupils was like fine threads being blown by the wind, constantly drifting backward. Second question, I said you can't recognize the DA character. Do you have a problem with that? This was indeed a humiliation. Ruizi had humiliated Chu Yang before, and not only had Chu Yang returned it, he had even gifted it. Kill. Ruizi did not reply. The immortal qi around him surged violently, and he attacked again. He was like a purple dragon, and his fist was wrapped in rolling purple qi. Behind him, the avatar of an immortal guiding the way appeared. This could be said to be the immortal's guidance, but it could also be said to be the immortal's condemnation of Chu Yang. In the vision, the immortal's finger was almost pointing directly at Chu Yang's nose. Do you know how to count? Chu Yang rushed forward, and his right fist seemed to be able to use an entire world as a weapon as he punched out. Immediately, tens of thousands of beams of holy light formed a mathematical problem of 1 + 1 = what? Behind him, a flourishing dynasty and a peaceful world appeared. Dawn. When the two fists collided, it was as if two stars had collided. The heavens and earth shook violently, as if they were going to resonate and disintegrate. The purple light and the holy light shone at the same time, and each of them shot up into the 9 heavens. All the clouds in the world were silently wiped out. The two streaks of light that soared into the sky were like two huge heavenly pillars, propping up the heavens and earth. Below, Chu Yang and Ruizi were like two thieves, trying to lift up the heavenly pillars and steal them away, enraging the heavenly pillars' owner. Ruizi was sent flying, while Chu Yang remained where he was, as if arguing with the heavenly pillars' owner. The matters of scholars could not be called stealing. The endless energy that was released from the collision was wildly leaking and destroying. It was as if the heavenly pillar's owner was unable to refute Chu Yang's twisted logic, and he completely lost control, cursing out crazily. Endless light and strong gales. Chapter 2446. Chu Yang didn't take advantage of his victory to pursue the matter. He raised two fingers again and said the same words, 2 questions. First, am I a weakling? Second question, do you know how to count? Ruizi still didn't say anything. The crowd couldn't help but complain about Chu Yang. This clown was too petty and too vengeful. Not only did he take revenge, but he also had to deliver another round of humiliation. He returned the favor doubly and faithfully carried it out. Just as I expected, everything I expected has happened. I've also lost. Ruizi finally spoke. This time, he didn't fly out of the pit. He lay in the big pit dejectedly with an extremely lonely expression. TSK, who told you to copy me? Do you think you can copy Song Tungming's paralysis just because you want to? Chu Yang suddenly let out a loud roar, scaring the astonished people half to death. Shi Danfeng was no exception. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but glare at him. Ruizi, on the other hand, wasn't surprised at all. He seemed to have foreseen Song Tungming's actions long ago. He said indifferently, Song Tangming, I've already foreseen all of your actions. Do you find it meaningful to play these games? The crowd was finally shocked. Ruizi had already said this once before. They didn't believe him at all and didn't care. However, when Ruizi emphasized this point again, it seemed like they had no choice but to believe him. Chu Yang smiled. Are you saying that in the state of immortals, your ability to predict the enemy's moves is definitely not inferior to mine? I'm not as good as you, but my predictions are definitely not wrong. The crowd's reaction lagged. After Ruizi spoke, the crowd burst into a shocking uproar. You can't be wrong about what you predicted. What does that mean? Could it be that Ruizi can predict all of Song Tungming's actions, predict everything that will happen, and the outcome? It can't be that scary, right? If Ruizi can predict all of this and react accordingly, how can he lose? If Ruizi can predict it, can't Song Tangming predict it? In such an inconceivable contest, even Ruizi admitted his inferiority and admitted defeat. If that's the case, doesn't it mean that the two of them already knew everything before they started fighting? Is that even possible? The great reaction of the crowd interrupted the performance of Chu Yang and Rui Child. They became the protagonists, unable to believe what they were hearing. The state of an immortal was just that unimaginable. The state of Confucianism was so unpredictable. Everyone's reactions were intense. The clamor was enormous, but it also subsided quickly because they all wanted to know the answer. You're not as good as me. How can you be sure that your prediction is absolutely correct? When Chu Yang opened his mouth again, he suddenly smiled strangely and said, Ruizi, please raise the little white flag. Little white flag. Ruizi was immediately stunned. Although the state of an immortal was very mysterious and could deduce many things from the opponent, to the extent that he could predict the opponent's every move and even their words, it was ultimately not foreseeing the future. There was still a limit. Moreover, Chu Yang was an extremely special person. He was very different from the people of the heavenly soul world. Just like this little white flag. Even if he knew Chu Yang's personality and guessed that his actions would definitely be comical and playful, he would never have thought that he would raise the little white flag. Whether it was the state of an immortal or the state of Confucianism, they could only predict the opponent's move. Ruizi was further defeated. His expression became even more gloomy. Then, without any resistance, he transformed into a white flag and raised it. Don't you know how to shake it a little to express your sincere surrender? Immediately, Ruizi shook the little white flag. There was no humiliation in his heart, only endless frustration. He would definitely not care about such humiliation. What kind of person was he? Such a small humiliation with a funny attribute was nothing to him. He was afraid that there would be even more outrageous things behind this bastard. Because this bastard could not be judged by common sense at all. If he made some strange humiliation, he might not be able to bear it. Chapter 2447. Waha. The small white flag was fluttering in the wind. Chu Yang was very happy. He put his hands on his hips and laughed wildly. His appearance made everyone want to beat him up. Unfortunately, no one had the ability to do so. Song Tangming, how many times has it been? Can't you change your pose? Although Ruizi had heard this kind of wild laughter before, he was still irritated to hear it again. Of course not, definitely not. Chu Yang criticized. This is called a characteristic, a distinct personal characteristic. A characteristic that was formed with great difficulty should be publicized. How can you give it up halfway? You're obviously digging a well like it's turning over the ground. You won't be able to drink water for the rest of your life. Waraha. Ruizi surrendered completely. What was originally a shameless thing could actually make this guy speak reason. He even slandered and belittled him, and then taught him. He was really sneaky. Song Tangming, let's be friends. He threw out this sentence. Chu Yang was instantly enraged. He said angrily, You bastard, didn't you want me to regret it until my intestines turned green? My intestines haven't turned green yet, so how can you change your mind? I definitely won't agree. Who doesn't brag when they're young? It's acceptable to brag to the heavens once in a while. Ruizi responded calmly. Besides, friends are made through fighting. Without fighting, you won't know each other. I'm completely convinced now. What else do you want? Chu Yang rubbed his chin and said affirmatively, What you said makes sense. I often brag to the heavens, and it's always more than 10,000 cows flying in the sky. Without fighting, you won't know each other. That makes sense too. Then, he said, however, your level is too low. You only cry when you see the coffin. I can't afford to have a friend like you. You still want to kill me? TSK. Ruizi said disdainfully. Can you kill me? Chu Yang also laughed. Are you talking about bird killers, children, old fogies, hypocrites, and hypocrites? Hee, you bastard, don't believe in your ability to predict the enemy's moves. You have to understand that I'm better at predicting the enemy's moves. You are indeed stronger, but overall, and when it comes to crucial decisions, I will definitely not be wrong. You sure are confident. Of course I'm confident. I'll make you lose confidence. Pa. Chu Yang suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed Ruizi out of the pit. Then, he grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up in the air. He sneered, Do you think that I don't dare to kill you now? Are you really that petty? Ruizi was not frightened. Thanks for the compliment. I didn't tell you about the chokehold in advance, So you could easily choke me without being condemned by the crowd. Isn't that very foresight? Now that you've said it, I'm embarrassed to pinch you. Chu Yang said disdainfully, who do you think I am? Do you think I care about what others think? Ruizi was suddenly speechless. The expression on his face was rather interesting. Finally, he said, you really are shameless. I don't find this kind of compliment fresh anymore. Can you change it to something else, please? After all, I'm a legendary figure who has plucked all the flowers in the world and who can't fit into the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. Chu Yang looked at Ruizi with a smile and asked seriously, can you not underestimate me, please? Ruizi's head was really hurting now. He really could not be sure if Chu Yang would dare to kill him or if he could kill him. Bang! Chu Yang threw Ruizi to the ground and said, can I proceed to the next step now? Yes. Did Ruizi have any other choice? No. Chapter 2448. Chu Yang had initially wanted to use the Great Harmony Sutra to infiltrate Ruizi's mind and read his memories to obtain the method to cultivate celestial qi. However, if this was discovered, it would be a little troublesome. Ruizi was right. He had no chance of killing Ruizi at all. The moment he wanted to act ruthlessly, Zhuo Saichang and the others would definitely appear immediately. Otherwise, he could directly kill Ruizi and then extract his spirit. Wouldn't the method to cultivate celestial qi be easily obtained? But now, this was the only way. You want to cultivate celestial qi? Ruizi was very surprised. Chu Yang had already grasped the civilization of the Wen Dao epoch. If he touched upon the celestial epoch, the two would clash. Can't I? You can. Then please hand it over. If it had been anyone else, Ruizi would have treated it like a fart. Putting aside the conflict between celestial qi and overwhelming righteousness, just cultivating celestial qi was extremely difficult. Not many people could do it. However, this thing in front of him was a super bastard. Super bastard. He could always do super bastard things. Ruizi surrendered. He tossed out a scripture and said, this is the 4 Symbols Celestial Sutra. Chu Yang was puzzled. That's enough. Enough. Is the 4 Symbols Celestial Sutra the Celestial Sutra that you're cultivating? No. Is this more advanced than yours? Of course the 4 Symbols Celestial Sutra is inferior. Chu Yang directly tossed the ancient scripture at Ruizi's face. You have the nerve to take it out to brush me off. You still don't understand the situation. Can your woman be given to others? Ruizi explained in a questioning tone. Of course not. Not even if you beat me to death. Chu Yang naturally understood what Ruizi meant. The Celestial Sutra that Ruizi cultivated definitely could not be spread to outsiders. He understood, but did not care. The reason is very sufficient, but this analogy still cannot stop me from being filthy. Do you understand? Celestial Sutras were not wives, and Ruizi naturally understood. He could only say, there is an even more beautiful woman. Do you want her? He threw another ancient scripture over and added, however, although this woman is beautiful, it will be difficult to marry her. If I can't do it, you might not be able to do it. Eat more and worry less. Just because the Ruizi could not cultivate an immortal sutra did not mean that he could not. Chu Yang took the immortal sutra and started flipping through it. Great development immortal scripture. There are 50 great Taos, and the heavens derive 49. Escape 1, capture 1, and derive 3000. There were 50 heavenly Taos and 49 great evolution Taos. The only thing missing was 1. Once this 1 was made up, the heavenly Taos would no longer change and return to primal chaos. 1 was a variable, 3000 was an imaginary number, and 3000 could be said to be infinite. The beginning of the Grand Development Immortal Scripture states that one must capture one of the Grand Taos and use this to derive a myriad of Taos. However, there were contradictions. There were only 50 heavenly Taos, so how could they evolve into tens of thousands of Taos? According to different understandings, this was actually not contradictory. There was a reason for the saying of 50, knowing one's destiny at 50, and not being confused at 40. 49 was a threshold between the two, so there was the saying of 50 heavenly Taos. However, the heavenly Taos could actually be infinite. Once this was solved, everything would be connected. One was a variable, so naturally, it could derive a myriad of things. However, how could one capture the escape one? Chu Yang only read the beginning and knew the difficulty of cultivating the grand development immortal scripture. To capture the escape one was equivalent to capturing a variable. How could that be possible? It was the case for other people, but it was not impossible for Chu Yang. He did not need to capture the escape one at all. Perhaps he already had it. His corporeal body carried the Tao, and his flesh shell was equivalent to a heaven and earth. The escape one was in his body, so there was no need to capture it. Chapter 2449. Chu Yang's sinister smile was like the smile of a demon. Even though Rui Zi was not familiar with this bastard, he could tell that this bastard had bad intentions. However, Rui Zi did not believe this. After thinking about it for a while, he became even more certain of this and directly agreed. Very well, I'll bet with you. Haha. Chu Yang laughed loudly. It looks like you still don't know what kind of genius this commander is. Just wait to lose your wife. Naturally, Chu Yang wanted to cultivate immortal qi or the state of an immortal. It would be best if there were no problems with it. However, the Great Development Immortal Sutra could not guarantee this. The Immortal Sutra that Rui Zi cultivated did not have this problem. Hence, Chu Yang made such a move. The reason for this was that it was very difficult to obtain the Immortal Sutra that Rui Zi cultivated from him. As for the Great Development Immortal Sutra or the Immortal Sutra that Rui Zi cultivated, he could only determine whether they were real or fake. Naturally, there were risks. How could something like the Immortal Sutra be so easily obtained? How could he do it without taking some risks? Hence, Chu Yang could not help but admit that he was very greedy. He also felt that one day, he would really die because of greed. Humph. Faced with Chu Yang's arrogance, Rui Zi only snorted coldly and did not say anything else. However, he mocked inwardly, Song Tangming, without the imprint of the immortal epoch, I want to see how you can cultivate it. Naturally, Chu Yang could sense Rui Zi's disdain. He also knew that Rui Zi was definitely holding back. He ignored Rui Zi and sat down cross-legged. Then, he flipped through the Great Development Immortal Sutra and started cultivating. When everyone saw this scene, they were very surprised. At first, many people made a ruckus. However, they were afraid of angering Chu Yang and suffering a calamity. So, their voices soon died down and they started discussing quietly. This Song Tangming is really bold. He has not even confirmed the authenticity of the Immortal Sutra, yet he dares to cultivate it so rashly. Is he crazy? Even if the Immortal Sutra is not fake, how can he cultivate it in such a short time? Cultivation requires talent. If it were that easy, everyone would be able to cultivate, and everyone would be able to cultivate immortal energy and enter the state of immortality. What you said makes sense, but look at who this person is. This was Song Tangming. If others couldn't do it, it didn't mean that he couldn't. That's why I think it's best not to look at him as usual. Otherwise, you'll be slapped in the face again. That's true. Putting everything else aside, just the battle between him and Rui Zi gave us so many unexpected surprises and caught us off guard. Among the many discussions, many people were not optimistic about Chu Yang. There were also many people who remained cautious and did not easily make a conclusion. However, no one dared to conclude that Chu Yang would succeed. Even the gigolo Wei Xian and Xia Wanjin were not confident. There was no need to mention Shi Danfeng. She was very clear about the cultivation of immortal qi. However, what made her angry was that she had reminded Chu Yang, but Chu Yang didn't take it seriously at all. Moreover, he had even made a solemn vow. Only in this way could Rui Zi be convinced wholeheartedly and properly feel what it meant to be a genius. It could be said that Chu Yang was simply impossible to reason with. However, everything had already begun. It was useless for Shi Danfeng to say anything more. As for Rui Zi, he looked at Chu Yang, who was slowly entering a meditative state, and his heart was restless. He thought to himself, I really want to slap this thing to death. Chapter 2450. As time passed, Chu Yang entered a deeper state of meditation. Suddenly, the soft discussions in the area disappeared completely, and there was complete silence. At some point, Zhuo Saichang, Liu Wu, Yu Fuji, Wang Cheng, Han Zheng, and Feng Bushun, the leader of the Ru Yi sect, had all arrived. They hovered in mid-air, and their gazes fell on Chu Yang. Rui Zi was the first to notice Zhuo Saichang and the others. Especially when he saw his teacher, Feng Bushun, he immediately had the urge to bang his head against the wall. He couldn't wait to slap himself. His teacher had appeared in the Sage King College, so how could Song Tangming kill him? Damn it, I was completely intimidated by that bitch Song Tangming. How embarrassing. In terms of the psychological battle, Rui Zi had completely lost again. He was frustrated, and he was even more dissatisfied with himself. He actually gave in to Chu Yang's intimidation. This was unacceptable. 7 evils blood demon staff. Demonic blade. 9 flames Rui shield, Rui sword. When he thought of the treasures that Chu Yang had taken from him, he found it even more difficult to accept. Not only did he give away treasures, but he also gave away immortal scriptures this time. He had completely turned into a boy who gave out treasures. There was no exaggeration at all. You're so stupid. Why don't you just die, Rui Zi? Rui Zi couldn't find a reason to forgive himself all of a sudden. When facing Chu Yang, he seemed to have completely turned into a complete fool. #yuan%, I won't take revenge on Song Tangming. I'm your son. Dong. He was so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. He stomped his foot hatefully until the ground rumbled like a drum. However, he still couldn't completely vent his emotions and calm down. How dare you affect other people's cultivation at this time? Feng Bushun immediately sent a voice transmission to rebuke him, making his face as black as the bottom of a pot. Am I your disciple, or is that bitch your disciple? He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Zhuo Saichang and the others didn't do anything to Rui Zi's actions. It was as if they didn't see it at all, and they seemed to be having a good chat with Feng Bushun. Brother Feng, do you think this bastard can cultivate immortal energy? Zhuo Saichang couldn't help but ask Feng Bushun. Feng Bushun pondered for a while before saying, although he has exceptional talent, if he wants to cultivate immortal qi, he must at least know what an immortal is. He must at least be able to visualize the imprint of the immortal epoch. Without these two, it would be impossible for an ordinary person to cultivate it. This was already being polite. Even a genius wouldn't be able to cultivate it. It's good to let him hit the wall, or else he'll really cause a ruckus. Right husband was very displeased with Chu Yang's arrogance. That's right. If this kid succeeds again, he'll probably be able to poke a hole in the sky. It's not just a hole, I think he can overturn the sky. These words seemed to be filled with dissatisfaction, but Feng Bushun could tell that Zhuo Saichang and the others liked Chu Yang a lot. He thought about it again and felt that it should be so. If it were him, he would also like Chu Yang a lot. His disciple was already amazing enough, but he was still no match for him. It was hard to dislike such a genius. After Chu Yang sat down cross-legged, he first used the Destiny Twins' martial spirits to analyze the Great Development Immortal Scripture. After finding that there were no problems, he also found that the Great Development Immortal Scripture was very compatible with him. Chapter 2451. It was the same for the two-dimensional heavenly abode coordinates. Wouldn't a profound meaning like an infinite heavenly abode have something in common with the Great Development Immortal Scripture? Hence, when Shadan Feng told him that if he wanted to use the Great Development Immortal Scripture to cultivate immortal qi, he had to know the epoch mark of the immortal epoch, he ignored it. When he was ready and entered a meditative state, he directly sent the entire Great Development Immortal Scripture into the two-dimensional heavenly abode coordinates. Immediately, he found that the Great Development Immortal Scripture was completely spread out from one heavenly grotto to another. Many profundities were displayed in front of him. It was as if the two-dimensional heavenly grotto was created by the Great Development Immortal Scripture. Later on, there was a conflict. The profound meaning of the great development immortal scripture suddenly stopped. It was like a river being blocked by a dam. It was like a traveler who lacked a permit. What the hell? Originally, everything was going smoothly. Suddenly, there was a change. Chu Yang was greatly disappointed. The joy in his heart completely disappeared. He pondered for a while but was helpless. He could only make a Hail Mary effort. In the two-dimensional heavenly abode coordinates, he set his eyes on the divine cauldron. Ever since Xiao Chen obtained this divine cauldron from the strange world, he had been unable to order it around. Hence, he had no other choice but to send the profound meaning of the great development immortal scripture into the divine cauldron. Something strange happened. 1. When the profound meaning of the great development immortal scripture was sent in, the divine cauldron shook. It was like a rough man who was disturbed from his dream. It was very angry and directly destroyed the profound meaning of the great development immortal scripture. When it sensed that there were similar existences in the two-dimensional heavenly abode coordinates, it was about to destroy them. However, when it sensed Chu Yang's consciousness, it suddenly changed its actions. 1. After the divine cauldron shook again, it became completely quiet. This great master actually gave me face. For some reason, Chu Yang already broke out in a cold sweat. The feeling the divine cauldron gave him made his heart palpitate. After the divine cauldron used the great development immortal scripture, he was not worried at all. Sure enough, everything that had been stagnant in the great development immortal scripture once again began to flow crazily. The profound meaning of the great development immortal scripture was completely out of control. It operated against common sense, and in the blink of an eye, surging primal chaos chi was produced. The primal chaos chi was not under his control at all. In the blink of an eye, it rushed into Chu Yang's sea of chi from the two-dimensional heavenly abode coordinates. Following his meridians, it automatically circulated the great development immortal scripture. Wherever the primordial energy went, the meridians in his body lit up like a divine lamp or a star in the night sky. Chu Yang had long since achieved the divinization or demonization of the acupoints. The chaotic chi passed through him very quickly, and only when it entered some unknown and strange acupoints did it slow down. Just like that, the primal chaos energy continued to flow. When all the circulation paths of the great development immortal scripture were connected, the magical power in Chu Yang's body suddenly changed. It became hazy and primal chaos energy, and it also turned into primal chaos energy. Is this chaotic chi the immortal chi? From start to finish, Chu Yang was only a bystander. He did not contribute to the entire process, and he did not understand this chaotic chi at all. What he could be sure of was that this chaotic immortal chi had many similarities with Ruizi's immortal chi, but there were also great differences. Furthermore, the chaotic chi's grade was much higher than Ruizi's purple chi immortal chi. It should be immortal chi. The divine cauldron was Chu Yang's capital for being willful, and it was also the reason for his blind judgment. Therefore, he closed his eyes and spoke, once again starting a battle with Ruizi. This thing, there's a high-energy warning ahead. A supreme genius is walking towards you. The time to witness a miracle has come. Please prepare your titanium dog eyes and be mentally prepared. Don't be too surprised. At this time, he was still in the mood to fool around. Chapter 2452. Not reaching the mountain in a few days, the heart of the mountain will be clear. There are square stones on the edges, picking up the immortal spirit. Then, Chu Yang slowly recited. Yu Yizi could no longer hold it in after hearing it and said in disdain, "What are you bragging about? What are you pretending for? Don't you know that you won't be able to show off later and will be laughed at by others?" He did not finish his words. Suddenly, a hazy aura of chaos emerged from Chu Yang's body and enveloped the void. In the blur, it was no longer possible to see Chu Yang's appearance clearly. Da. The strange sound of footsteps inexplicably resounded in everyone's hearts. They searched around, but couldn't find the owner of the footsteps. Instead, they found footprints appearing one after another in the misty surroundings of Chu Yang. These footprints formed a small path that led straight inside. Following the small path, a bridge of light was imprinted in everyone's eyes. Under the bridge, there was a small river with 7 lotus petals. Every petal was a different color. Under the lotus leaves, there were also 4 beautiful cormorants playing in the water. Everyone was intoxicated in the mesmerizing state when the scene within quickly spread out. A yong was in front and there were 2 rows of stone pillars. The yong was small at the top and large at the bottom. It had a handle without a button, and beside the handle was a spiral. There were clouds and thunder patterns in between. It was like a bell but not a bell, and it produced a strange sound. On the 2 rows of stone pillars, there were tumbling cloud dragons, hundreds of birds facing the wind, magpies playing with plum blossoms, and so on. Further in, there were lush flowers and trees. Slopes, plains, platforms, waterfalls, and valleys were all one. There were strange peaks and precipices in the surroundings. Each of them competed for the terrain and had a myriad of postures. Along the mountain, the path was like a dragon. The dragon's spine coiled 18 times. At the end of the coiling, the 18 underwater residences, the 5 subdued seas, the 24 governance houses, the 36 quiet houses, the 10 continents, the 3 islands, the 10 grotto heavens, the 36 small grotto heavens, and the 72 blessed lands all appeared. Mother Chi, the 10 grotto heavens, the 36 small grotto heavens, and the 72 blessed lands. How is this possible? Everyone was immersed in that beautiful world, but Rui Zi began to roar like a madman, waking everyone up with a start. However, they did not really understand what Yu Yi had said. Feng Bushun understood, and understood very well. He was the sect leader of the Yu Yi sect, so he had always maintained his composure. However, at this moment, he had completely lost his composure. He said in a trembling voice, "How is this possible? Could it be that he is the Lord of 10,000 immortals? The 10 great grotto heavens, the 36 minor grotto heavens, and the 72 blessed lands are all present in his immortal energy. One immortal paradise. Every immortal cultivator would at most manifest 1 paradise in the immortal chi they cultivated. However, Song Tangming actually manifested 10 great paradises, 36 minor paradises, and 72 blessed lands. This was something that would not appear in the immortal epoch. In the immortal epoch, the 10 great grotto heavens, the 36 minor grotto heavens, and the 72 blessed lands could be said to encompass all the grotto heavens and blessed lands. Although there were other grotto heavens and blessed lands, the 10 great grotto heavens, the 36 minor grotto heavens, and the 72 blessed lands were occupied by the strongest immortals. They were the symbol of the immortal Tao. Therefore, the appearance of 10 great paradises, 36 minor paradises, and 72 blessed lands in the immortal Chi could be said to be shocking. Even in the immortal epoch, many people would be shocked to death because no one could say what this meant. Even the Lord of 10,000 immortals was not enough to describe it. Feng Bushun did not expect that after the immortal epoch was destroyed, this phenomenon that had not appeared in the immortal epoch would actually appear in front of him at this moment. In a word, a demon had appeared. This kid was a monster, a monstrous monster. Kill him. Suddenly, such a voice appeared in Feng Bushun's mind. He was stunned, and then his entire person was stunned. The voice of the immortal epoch came from the epoch mark. Chapter 2453. The imprint of the immortal epoch had actually issued an order. This was unprecedented. Feng Bushun's mind was blank and chaotic. He subconsciously wanted to obey the order and kill Chu Yang. However, he suddenly trembled as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. He was extremely horrified. At that moment, he seemed to have encountered a terrifying person, and the most terrifying thing had happened to him. In a short moment, his entire body was covered in cold sweat. His face was devoid of color, and his lips were blue and purple. His body trembled incessantly as if he had been poisoned, and was about to die immediately. Could it be that the destruction of the immortal epoch was truly as the rumors said? Feng Bushun was completely terrified. There had always been such a rumor about the destruction of the immortal epoch. Moreover, This rumor was one of the mainstream ones. An immortal had tried to completely control and enslave the entire immortal world. However, he was not strong enough and could not do anything to the immortals of the immortal Tao. Therefore, he was crazy enough to destroy the entire immortal Tao and then rebuild it to achieve his goal of controlling and enslaving the immortals. Feng Bus-hun did not believe this rumor at first. However, at this moment, he had no choice but to believe it. The imprint of the immortal epoch had actually issued an order for him to kill Chu Yang. Why do I have to kill him? Naturally, it's because Song Tangming does not have the imprint of the immortal epoch. However, he cultivated immortal qi and jumped out of the madman's control. He might even establish a new immortal world and destroy everything. Therefore, Song Tangming must die. From this kind of strangeness, Feng Bus-hun immediately understood the crux of the matter. This led him to believe in that theory even more. Now that the immortal epoch had been destroyed, he had found the reason why so many people had survived. That madman needed many people alive so that he could use these people to control the new world, the new immortal realm. He also completely understood why it was impossible to cultivate immortal qi without the immortal epoch. It was because you were not under the control of a madman. Horrifying. It was too horrifying. Feng Bus-hun had not expected that someone would really want to destroy the entire immortal Tao world and kill thousands of lives in order to achieve his goal. What shocked him the most was that the madman, that deranged beast, was actually still alive. Because of his extreme fear, Feng Bus-hun ordered his men to attack and kill Chu Yang. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a madman, such a terrifying existence? But in the end, he forcibly suppressed this kind of fear. The reason was very simple. He was resistant and conflicted with that madman, that insane beast. Although he was extremely afraid, the voice in his heart was even more powerful. Do you want to be a human or a dog? If he couldn't even be a human, how could he become an immortal? No one was willing to be controlled and enslaved by others, and Feng Bufeng was no exception. Thus, his choice was very clear. After that, his fear slowly disappeared, and his thoughts became clearer. Even if that crazy demon is still alive, his current strength is definitely very weak. Otherwise, why would he need me to take action? If we kill Song Tangming, not only will we be helping the tyrant, we will also be severing a new path to immortality. Song Tangming cannot die. This is bad. That crazy demon can send orders through the imprint. He can also send orders to Feng and the others. Thinking of this, Feng Bus-hun was greatly shaken. He immediately took action to imprison the people of the Ruyi sect. Chapter 2454. Fortunately, there are not many people. Otherwise, even if I tried my best to hide everything, I would not have been able to. Who? Feng Bus-hun let out a long breath of turbid air, finally calming down. As for Ruyi and the others from the Ruyi sect, as well as Shidanfeng, their hearts were in turmoil. They were so frightened that they nearly fainted. When they suddenly realized that they were imprisoned, they were greatly shaken. No one is allowed to have any malicious thoughts about Song Tangming. Otherwise, we will kill without mercy. Soon, they all received Feng Bufeng's spiritual sense voice transmission. Although they did not understand and were still alarmed, they calmed down. Shidanfeng was only shocked that the epoch mark could send out orders. She had never thought of killing Chu Yang, as he was her man. Ruyi was eager to do so. However, he feared all kinds of things, so how could he dare to do so? As for the other Ruyi sect disciples, they were mostly the same. You all should have heard of a deranged reason for the destruction of the immortal epoch, right? Feng Bufeng's second sentence shocked Shidanfeng, Ruyi, and the others. They were instantly horrified to the extreme. That explanation was actually true. While they were shocked, they also understood why Feng Bus-hun stopped them. Their hearts turned upside down, and they could not calm down. Shidanfeng had never expected that the scoundrel who had mysteriously become her man would be so shocking, directly becoming a threat to those people, a thorn in their side. Could it be that he is the hope of the immortal epoch, helping us break free from the control of that evil hand? Could it be that my meeting with him was secretly arranged by the predecessors? Only then would the immortal epoch be more beneficial to us. That evil hand had made arrangements. Could it be that the immortals of the immortal epoch had not made arrangements? Shi Danfeng would not believe it if they did not. She even believed that her meeting with Chu Yang was not only arranged by someone, but that Chu Yang's meeting with Rui Zi was also definitely meticulously arranged. Rui Zi's shock was no less than Shi Danfeng's. He was a smart person in the first place. After his master stopped him and reminded him, he completely understood. This was a choice between being a human or being a dog. Earlier, his choice was equivalent to being a dog, willing to be ordered around by someone. However, did he cultivate to be a dog, to be ordered around by others, to be controlled by some bastard? He cultivated for the sake of longevity and freedom. He definitely didn't want to be controlled or enslaved by others in the end. All of this appeared in his mind, and he was also covered in cold sweat. He secretly rejoiced in his heart, fortunately, I'm not very capable. Otherwise, I would have made a big mistake. At this moment, he suddenly realized that not having any ability could actually be a kind of great fortune. It was much more powerful than any powerful ability. Of course, he also understood the meaning of Chu Yang's existence, the immortal Tao, a new hope. That slut had already become the enemy of the Black Hand that destroyed the immortal epoch. This bitch is truly capable. What kind of person is the mastermind behind the destruction of the immortal epoch? To think that she can't wait for him to die. Rui Zi knew that he didn't have this kind of ability, so he felt even more conflicted and even more defeated. This kind of experience was really not a good one for a son of a bitch. Just listen to my orders. Feng Bushun's voice rang out in their minds again. That crazy demon should be extremely weak right now. Pretend to obey his orders and reply to him at the end. Song Tangming is already dead. Toying with such a person is such a glorious thing. I should be the one doing this. Why didn't I think of that? If he had done it here, Rui Zi would have had the courage to do so. He would not have fallen so far behind Chu Yang. However, earlier, he only felt fear and defeat. He did not have any other thoughts. Chapter 2455. I can't forgive you. Slap. Rui Zi could not forgive himself and suddenly slapped himself hard. In the silence, his slap was very strange and attracted many people's attention. His face was boiling hot and instantly flushed red. Then, he suddenly realized how bad his mentality was and how fragile he was. If it was that bitch, would he care about how others looked at him? If it was that bitch, would he care about these setbacks? Instead, he would feel that such setbacks made his life more exciting and rich. Slap. He was furious with himself and slapped himself hard again. Then, he said angrily to everyone, "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen someone slap himself before? You bunch of country bumpkins, you're really ignorant. I can't even be bothered to talk to you." Rui Zi suddenly felt a burst of joy in his heart when he said these ruffian words. He immediately understood. No wonder that bitch keeps acting like a bitch. So it's very satisfying to do this. He thought of more things. If that bitch was me, would he slap himself? Definitely not. If that bitch slapped himself, he wouldn't be a bitch anymore. That bitch cares more about his own feelings. Why would he care about others? At least he loves himself. Rui Zi realized that he was extremely stupid. How could there be an idiot who would slap himself? The person who treated him the best in the world, the person who cared about him the most, was himself. What was wrong that he could not tolerate or forgive? No matter how stupid that person was, he was still himself. No, I've never been stupid. Rui Zi immediately corrected himself. From today onwards, even if everyone in the world said that he was a fool, he would definitely not think that he was stupid. Because of these thoughts, Rui Zi realized that the gap between him and that bitch was not just big, but very, very big. Bitch, just you wait. I'll definitely be even more despicable than you, and I'll definitely live a more exciting life than you. I've never lost to anyone because I'm Rui Zi. Suddenly, he realized that he also wanted to be like that bitch, putting his hands on his hips and laughing arrogantly. Fuck, That bastard took the lead and even specially declared that it's his personal characteristic. Ruizi was depressed again. He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. It was as if the talented girl of Xiaoxiang had been snatched away. He felt very hurt inside. If you say another word, I'll beat you to death, you bastard. Feng Bushun warned him with his divine sense. Ruizi replied in a carefree manner, Old man, I know, I'm a genius. Do you know where all this nonsense comes from? This Ruizi looked very familiar. He seemed to be very similar to Song Tangming. When Feng Bushun realized this, he was suddenly a little confused. His originally good disciple, after meeting a slut, also became a shameless slut. This was really too bad. The wind was not going well, and he was extremely vexed. He even had the heart to beat Chu Yang to death. This process was actually very short, and no one noticed it because all of their attention was on Chu Yang. The changes to Chu Yang's body were very rapid. Among the chaotic immortal Qi, the 10 major heavens, 36 minor heavens, 72 blessed lands, etc., all kinds of strange immortal phenomena disappeared in the blink of an eye as the chaotic immortal Qi entered his body. When he opened his eyes, there was a great surge of mystery that made one instantly enter a state of enlightenment. It was very miraculous. His aura was even more restrained, like a scholar without the strength to truss a chicken. Of course, this was on the premise that he did not have a ruffian aura and his eyes. At this moment, everyone could clearly see Chu Yang's eyes. His pupils were divided into two, as if they were two worlds. Chapter 2456. Chu Yang's left and right eyes were different. Prosperity, chaos, prosperity, weakness, like water and fire, like yin and yang, like the sun and moon, representing two sides, two extremes. At this moment, righteous energy and immortal Qi, Confucian state and immortal state, Confucian and immortal, Confucian epoch and immortal epoch merged perfectly within him. There was no conflict at all. They even complemented each other, providing support and support. Why doesn't the Confucian state and immortal state conflict? Is it because he's a scumbag? Or is it because everything I've learned and know is wrong? Are you kidding me? Are you telling me that I've lived for 20 years in vain? Scumbag, are you still human? Before anyone could react, Ruizi opened his mouth and spat. He was extremely agitated. In the end, he didn't vent enough and directly activated the 3-character classic. #yuan %. He cursed the heavens and the earth. He didn't even let go of the mountains and lakes, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Ruizi cursed all things in the world, causing Feng Bushun's face to turn as black as the bottom of a pot. His feeling wasn't wrong. His disciple had indeed become a scumbag, becoming the same as Song Tangming. However, the perfect fusion of the Confucian state and immortal state was indeed too shocking. He himself couldn't help but have the urge to curse. The state of Confucianism and the state of immortality were both extreme states. Those who activated these extreme states would overload their bodies with the infusion of the profound mysteries and power because their own realm and strength had not reached such a level. This was like a porcelain bottle that couldn't contain any more medicinal liquid after it was filled with pills. However, the thing in front of him was actually able to do it. Inconceivable. Fantastical. Song Tangming, you scumbag, are you still human? You #yuan %. Song scumbag, you better stop before you go too far, or else I'll #yuan. After Ruizi, 2 more voices rushed out. Their spittle flew everywhere. They were very excited. It was as if Chu Yang had snatched away their wives. Pretty boy Wei Xian and Xia Wanjin. The two of them were even more excited than Ruizi. Ruizi was dumbfounded. It turned out that there were already so many people who had stepped into the realm of despicable people. He had actually comprehended it so late and so superficial. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a pretty boy before? What are you being so shameless for? Are you a kindred spirit? Hurry up and go hug your nobility. Pretty boy Wei Xian and Xia Wanjin were already very displeased with Ruizi. Ruizi had taken the initiative to show off in front of the two of them. When Ruizi revealed a surprised expression, the two of them immediately started cursing. In addition, before Ruizi could retaliate and properly learn and practice his shamelessness so that he could become a better bitch, the gigolo Wei Xian and Xia Wanjin had already ignored him and started arguing with each other. Gigolo, what does this have to do with you? You belong to the world of gigolos, not the world of shameless bastard. If you dare to shout again, I'll strip you naked and hang you up to dry. Xia Wanjin roared. Wei Xian did not show any signs of weakness. Bullshit, not only do I belong to the world of gigolos, but I also belong to the world of shameless bastards. You're just jealous. I'm jealous of a pretty boy like you who makes picking up girls boring. Life is so boring. Pooh. You still dare to say you're not jealous? Yes, I'm jealous. I'm jealous that you can't enjoy the fun of picking up girls. I'm jealous that your life is boring. You're shameless and strong. I'm so jealous. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of punches and kicks burst out. Pretty boy Wei Xian punched Xia Wanjin, and Xia Wanjin immediately punched him back. The two of them did not dodge, nor did they use their cultivation. They punched and punched each other, causing their faces to swell up. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing how to react. There was already Song Tangming, a super clown, and now two more had jumped out. Chapter 2457. Rui's eyes widened even more. It turned out that he could fight like this. He had learned a lot. Hey rich guy, my skills are higher than yours. Pretty boy Wei Xian retreated from the battle and cupped his fists at the crowd. Everyone, there is a high energy warning ahead. Please prepare your titanium alloy dog eyes. Pretty boy, if you have the ability, don't learn from Song Pit. You are a typical example of a parrot. Xia Wanjin realized that Chu Yang was indeed invincible in the world of jokes. He actually had no good words to counter the high energy warning ahead and the titanium alloy dog eyes. He was very angry. Whoosh. Wei Xian didn't care at all. He moved and went back to pick up his small stool. Then, he moved again and suddenly appeared behind Chu Yang, smashing the stool down. With a crack, the small stool broke into two pieces. Then, he threw the small stool away, put his hands on his hips, and laughed wildly. Waha, this pretty boy is invincible. Then, he became even more rampant. Who in this world can give this bitch a small stool? Only I, pretty boy Wei Xian, can do that. You will get countless small stool. Rui was really upset. In terms of shamelessness, not only was he inferior to Song Tangming, but he was also inferior to this pretty boy. Waha. Wei Xian was even more proud. That's why I said you're not dirty. It's normal to be beaten by a bitch, but it's definitely not normal to beat a bitch. You don't understand. Xia Wanjin shook his finger at Rui, then suddenly roared, that's how noble your thoughts are, scram as far away as you can. If you come any closer, I'll beat you to death shamelessly. Rui's face was constipated. Those two bitches were originally at odds with each other, but they actually joined forces to attack him. At this moment, Xia Wanjin observed the current battlefield. With a whoosh, he moved and grabbed the small stool that had broken into two pieces. Then, he laughed wildly. Waha, I'm rich. These two small stool pieces will definitely be worth tens of thousands of gold in the future. Thank you. He quickly put the two small stool pieces into his spatial artifact, then smiled and cupped his fists at pretty boy Wei Xian to express his gratitude. Wei Xian was stunned. That was his treasure, how could he throw it away? Ruizi was stunned once again. Not only did this dog tell him to scram as far as he could, he was even more shameless and despicable than that gigolo. It was just SOSO. At the very least, he wouldn't be able to get the third place in the world. According to the ranking of those present, he was ranked fourth. That bitch, give me back my stool. Wei Xian went completely mad and pounced toward Xia Wanjin. However, he suddenly saw a face with two pupils in the frame of his eyes. Two rays of light floated out from the two pupils. That face was clearly on the verge of exploding. Haha. Xia Wanjin laughed again. Pretty boy, is that all you've got? You still have a long way to go. Let Song Kang give you a good lesson first. This dark face was naturally Chu Yang. Chu Yang's cultivation was complete, but he was still carefully comprehending and savoring it when a small stool came crashing down on him. This feeling was really terrible. Bitch, what do you want? Wei Xian was not afraid at all and retorted directly. His eyes were as wide as copper bells. That's how fellow cultivators should be. You should reward me. Of course I'll reward you. Crack crack. Chu Yang grinned and clenched his fists until they made cracking sounds. Then, he moved and hit Wei Xian until he cried for his parents. Then, he said to Xia Wanjin, fellow cultivator, I heard that you met a bitch in the East Continent. If it's him, what kind of reward will he give? Strip him naked and hang him up to dry. Xia Wanjin immediately understood. Chu Hang, that bitch, had dragged him into this in order to hide his identity but also wanted to use this long-awaited method. Chapter 2458. Strip him naked and hang him up to dry. He directly gave Chu Yang the answer he wanted. Then, Chu Yang said, Wife, there's a high energy in front of you. Please close your eyes. Although Shi Danfeng was still a little confused, she suddenly panicked. As soon as she turned around, she heard the sound of fire and the screams of many women. She completely understood what was going on and heard Chu Yang's voice. Female students, I announce that you will be responsible for the gigolo Wei Xian, Waraha. After a burst of rampant laughter, Chu Yang smiled at the gigolo Wei Xian and said, What do you think, gigolo? This reward is not bad. Most of the females here are now yours. I'm loyal enough, right? Wei Xian wanted to die, but he didn't dare to fart because this bitch might still have other tricks up her sleeve. Haha. Xia Wanjin rolled on the ground laughing. What a huge gamble. Rui Zi's outlook on life was overturned once again. The shamelessness he thought of was far from enough. According to this, he really wasn't a kindred spirit. The scene was really chaotic and foul. Especially when strip him naked and hang him up to dry was mentioned, most of the people were almost petrified. Zhuo Saichang, Yu Fuji, and the other four originally had smiles on their faces as they watched these little bastards fool around. However, their faces became darker and darker. After the gigolo Wei Xian was hung up to dry, they finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Song Tangming was really too outrageous. Song Tangming, Zhuo Saichang and Yu Fuji gritted their teeth and spoke almost at the same time. One of them was the mountain leader of the Sage Monarch Academy, while the other was an old fogey. They definitely couldn't tolerate Chu Yang's behavior. Whoosh. Chu Yang didn't say anything when he heard this. He immediately wanted to escape. However, just as his figure disappeared into the void, a huge hand appeared out of thin air and grabbed him. Then, it threw him to the ground. The force was great, but the ground remained unscathed. After the scattered light blossomed, Chu Yang bounced up. At the same time, Zhuo Saichang, Yu Fuji, Liu Wu, Wang Cheng, and Han Zheng, the five of them had already taken their positions. When Chu Yang bounced up, Zhuo Saichang slapped him with his big hand, and Chu Yang fell down again, and then bounced up again. Zhuo Saichang and the other four didn't miss a single one of them, they were all mercilessly killed. Suddenly, the ground seemed to have turned into a table tennis table. Chu Yang was a table tennis player, while Zhuo Saichang and the other four were table tennis players. Chu Yang's bitterness could be imagined. Moreover, no matter how he begged, it was useless. Zhuo Saichang and the others were like blind and deaf people. They didn't see or hear him at all. Haha. Xia Wanjin laughed like crazy. These five people looked very serious, but in fact, they were not serious at all. Meeting them was Chu Hang's bad luck. Haha. Even the gigolo Wei Xian was laughing like crazy at this moment. He was very happy, and when Rui saw this, he was full of admiration. If he was Wei Xian and was stripped naked and hung up to dry, he would definitely not rest until he was dead. He definitely wouldn't be like Wei Xian, in other words, his tolerance was far inferior to that gigolo Wei Xian. When Feng Bushun saw this scene, his face couldn't help but twitch. Haha. After this, everyone burst into laughter, laughing so hard that many people were about to cry. Such a scene might only be seen once in a lifetime. Bastard, why aren't you telling us all the details about you? Divine Sense voice transmission. Zhuo Saichang and the other four finally responded, but it was a question that Chu Yang had never thought of. Immediately, he completely understood that Zhuo Saichang and the other four had deliberately landed him in such a state. In fact, even if there was nothing, they would have caused trouble. This was a change in direction of interrogation. This is bad. Chapter 2459. Or, did I reveal any flaws? Chu Yang didn't understand how Zhuo Saichang and the others had noticed. Later, he learned that it was because of the King of Chaos. When the King of Chaos heard that the Sage Monarch College had produced an incredible Song Tangming, who had violently broken through the 18 levels of the Path of Strange Gates, who had killed a saint as a Nirvana realm cultivator, he immediately rushed over. As for what the King of Chaos was thinking, no one knew. But because of his arrival, Zhuo Saichang and the others began to suspect Chu Yang's identity. Of course, Zhuo Saichang and the others didn't let the King of Chaos get away. Bird killer, I am Song Tangming. How many times do you want me to say it? Old fogey, what's wrong with you? How could you do such a ridiculous thing? I'm really disappointed in you. Chu Yang refused to admit it. Zhuo Saichang and the others didn't say anything. They continued to play table tennis. In any case, they believed that pretty boy Wei Xian was right. If they could beat this little bastard up now, then they should hurry up and beat him up. Otherwise, they wouldn't have another chance. According to this bastard's growth rate, who would be able to beat him up after a while? Besides, beating this little bastard up was an honorable thing to do. Especially in the future, when word got out, people would be envious. Beat him up, then beat him up enough. This kid wasn't honest at all. Bang bang bang, bang bang bang. Every time Chu Yang was smashed down and smashed to the ground, his bones and tendons were about to break. He was seeing stars. Needless to say, the pain was unbearable. But no matter how he quibbled, no matter how he begged, it was all useless. It seemed that as long as he didn't admit his identity, this situation would continue until he surrendered. Everyone was laughing because they knew that Song Deming wouldn't die. He was just being tormented. But he was better off dead than alive. They didn't think Song Deming could escape. Bird killer, I surrender. Chu Yang raised the little white flag and waved it. Zhuo Saichang didn't stop. He sent a message through Divine Sense. Do you only have the little white flag and the ability to wave it? The meaning behind his words made Chu Yang even more convinced. Stop pretending. Do you think we don't know? Damn it, when this marshal's ability comes up, each and every one of you will become ping-pong balls. Don't even think about escaping. Chu Yang was infuriated, but in the end, he could only send a telepathic message. Bird killer, old fogey, child, hypocrite, and hypocrite, stand properly for me. I am Chu Kuangren, Chu Nitian, Chu Mirage, and Chu Xiangxian. I just want to ask you, are you afraid? You really are that troublemaker. Strip them naked and hang them up to dry. They're too distinctive. Put your hands on your hips and laugh wildly. This is also very clear. Was it that obvious? Chu Yang was speechless for a moment, but he felt that something was wrong. Why were these 5 old men so concerned about him? If they didn't pay attention to Chu Yang, how would they be able to sneak in under a codename and ferret him out? He didn't need to ask. He understood very quickly. Previously, he had stirred up quite a commotion. Insulting the Chaos King was one thing, but saying that no one in Central Plains was literate, no one could speak the human language, and no one could count. Such arrogance should have stirred up quite a commotion in Central Plains. Moreover, the questions he'd set were extraordinary. It was possible that the Sage Monarch College had noticed. It didn't matter whether or not he was Chu Yang. He'd already admitted that he was Chu Yang. If this continued, he'd really fall apart. Bird killer, old fogey, this time you can give me amnesty. I've already told you everything I know. Sorry, this seems to be fun. I can't stop now. Chapter 2460. No one was tired of it. They watched with interest. Later, when Zhuo Saichang took Chu Yang away and punished him severely, people began to talk about it. No matter what, this Song Tangming is too amazing. He actually cultivated immortal qi in such a short time. It's not just amazing. It's terrifying. Have you ever seen anyone as scary as Song Tangming? He's also a complete joker. Who dares to speak up when they disagree? Ha ha. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but laugh. This was indeed the truth. Our Sage King College will become famous again because of Song Tangming. The entire middle ground will definitely be shocked. Not just famous. In the future, who dares to be impudent when they meet our Sage King College? If they dare to be impudent, hehe, it will definitely be interesting. With Song Tangming around, I feel like we can do whatever we want in middle ground. Our Sage King College has such a peerless figure. It will definitely be a big deal. The Sage King College was strong, so were they. Therefore, many students of the Sage King College were already thinking about what kind of changes would happen with Song Tangming's appearance. Some were even daydreaming. When Shi Danfeng left and returned to the Xiaoxiang sect, Feng Bushun left with Rui Zi and a few people from the Rui sect. The curtain fell on the matter completely. However, the matter didn't calm down because of this. Instead, it became more and more intense. When the people outside the Sage King College heard the news, they couldn't believe it at all. Countless people came to confirm it. It was easy to imagine the extent of the commotion outside the Sage King College. It could be said that the name Song Tangming was known by everyone in middle ground. However, no one could see Song Tangming. No matter who they were, they couldn't see him. Chu Yang wanted to go out and see him, but it was impossible. Zhuo Saichang and the others trained him even more viciously because he had to go to Taijing City to participate in the imperial examination. There was still a period of time before the imperial examinations. During this period of time, Chu Yang was simply living in the 18 levels of hell. Even his martial arts cultivation had completely stopped. He used all of his time to study various kinds of literature and so on. As a result, he once again advanced by leaps and bounds in the field of literature. The slogan "I'm a genius" became a reason to destroy him. The books that other people had to study for a year, or even a few years, he had to finish reading them in a day or two. Fortunately, he had 10 doppelgangers, otherwise, he would definitely die. However, half a month later, at the end of summer, Chu Yang had lost a lot of weight. He was a martial Dao expert who could kill saints as if they were chickens when he was in the Nirvana realm. He also had both the Confucian and immortal Daos, but he had actually lost weight. It could be seen how tragic it was. After this, Chu Yang was let go, and the gigolo Wei Xian also knew Chu Yang's specific identity, and was extremely depressed. If he knew that Song Deming was Chu Hang, he would have definitely smashed the small bench. However, he would have already run away. Why would he be stripped naked and hung up to dry? This was the third day after Chu Yang's liberation. He ate and slept, woke up and ate again. After 3 days, he finally found Xie Wanjin and beat up Xie Wanjin and Wei Xian, who were competing to see who was more cheap. Only then did he open his mouth. "Jinjin, this commander wants to go to Taijing City to marry a wife. Do you have any objections?" Xie Wanjin's face darkened. From Chu Hang's mouth, his name kept changing. Xie, Wanjin, Jinjin, etc. However, none of them were domineering. "I have no objections. I hope you get beaten to death in Taijing City." Xie Wanjin was not in a good mood. However, in his heart, he was thinking about how to use Chu Hang to trick people. The Xie family was in Taijing City. Therefore, there were too many people in Taijing City that Xie Wanjin was unhappy with. He was helpless, but Chu Hang was definitely not. "Chu Hang, as long as you agree to let me be cheaper than Jinjin, I will tell you the scenery of Taijing City." The gigolo Wei Xian laughed. Although he was not from Taijing City, he still had a general understanding of Taijing City. Chapter 2461. There are 6 young masters in Taijing City. Xie Wanjin didn't give Wei Xian a chance to speak. Everyone in Taijing City knows about these 6 young masters. They represent the 6 strongest forces in Taijing City. Among these 6 families, there are the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families. Wei Xian interrupted when Xie Wanjin paused. The two of them glared at each other and almost got into a fight. However, they were both suppressed. Chu Yang wanted to know more about the enemy, so he couldn't allow them to fool around. As for the other 2 families, one is Qi Manor and the other is your wife's Duke Ju's manor. In the end, Xie Wanjin explained the situation in Taijing City. After all, he was the local tyrant. Let's talk about my wife's family first. What is my future father-in-law like? Is my mother-in-law easy to deal with? Chu Yang was worried about his mother-in-law at first. However, in this world, men were the ones who had the final say. Therefore, he was more concerned about his future father-in-law. He only knew that his father-in-law loved wine. When he thought about the wine, he felt annoyed and lamented that he had wasted all his time. Your father-in-law, he. Speaking of which, he is quite interesting. I can use one word to describe him. Xie Wanjin described him accurately: despicable, extremely despicable. Although he's not as despicable as you, he's enough to make you suffer. Chu Yang wasn't afraid of serious people. He was afraid of despicable people. However, Xie Wanjin continued, I don't think your father-in-law is the most difficult person to deal with. It should be your brother-in-law, Shangguan Can. He's the most difficult person to deal with. Shangguan Can was one of the 6 young masters in Taijing City. When Duke Ju wasn't around, he was a playboy. However, when Duke Ju was around, he was a gentleman. He was knowledgeable and elegant. Other than describing Shangguan Can in this way, there was another way to describe him. He seemed to have fallen in love with his sister. He hated anyone who liked his sister, Shangguan Lan. He would definitely make that person suffer miserably. Therefore, he especially hated Chu Yang. He wanted nothing more than to cut Chu Yang into pieces and cut him into 1,000 pieces. According to what Xie Wanjin said, Chu Yang felt that it was necessary to beat up Shangguan Can. However, Shangguan Can was also a monster, and his cultivation wasn't very high. He was only at the 6th Order Saint realm. The Grand Capital City's 6 young masters were mostly around the 6th Order Saint realm, but they could kill peak-level saints as if they were chickens. They could even kill earthly Emperor realm experts with ease. Among the 6 major powers, excluding Duke Ju's manor, Qi Manor was a member of the royal family and was the most powerful. Wang family and Chen family were extremely ancient aristocratic families that had experienced more than 6 dynasties, but they had always prospered and had a very deep foundation. Who knew how many great emperors they had produced? As for the Wu clan and the Xie clan, they had a background in the immortal Tao. They were the disciples of the great sects of the immortal Tao epoch. After the destruction of their sects, they had directly assimilated into the Central Plains, establishing their own clans and reproducing. These 2 clans were extremely powerful. It was said that the old ancestor of these 2 clans was an immortal. However, that wasn't the worst part. Worst of all, whether it was the Wang and Chen families, the Xie and Wu families, or the outstanding figures of Qi Manor, the 6 young masters of Taijing, they all adored Shangguan Lan and were determined to win her over. Chu Yang frowned for a moment after listening to them. Then, he said, is this considered trespassing into a dragon's lair or a tiger's den? What do you think? He didn't listen to Wei Xian and Xie Wanjin's teasing, nor did he listen to them. They were so angry that they gritted their teeth and laughed heartily in the end. In the end, Chu Yang decided to enter the Grand Capital City with his real face. Since he could sweep through all his enemies, he might as well be straightforward. He wrote a letter and sent it to Shangguan Lan. At this time, he couldn't help but think of the Ice Kuan. If only the Ice Kuan was here. Then, he laughed at himself. When did he become so weak? Chapter 2462. On the last day of summer, the sun was still like hot needles, piercing one's skin. It was extremely poisonous, especially at noon. At noon, the sun hung high in the sky. After Chu Yang changed back to his original appearance, he left the Saint Monarch Academy. He left this place where he had nothing but memories hanging over his head. Although the memory of Xiaoxiang girl was also deep in his bones, the former was still the main theme. He also deeply remembered the faces of Zhuo Caichang, Yu Fuji, Liu Wu, Wang Cheng, and Han Zheng. However, when he left, he realized that he already missed them. He missed those days and those faces. I can be considered to have graduated from the Saint King Academy, but that damn teacher shouldn't have become so cute immediately. I can only blame myself for being too self-aware. In the Saint King Academy, Chu Yang naturally didn't gain nothing. To be exact, he gained a lot. Martial arts were secondary. The most important thing was that his literary attainments had been greatly strengthened. Unlike the people of this world, Chu Yang attached great importance to this kind of accomplishment. Although it was mixed with a lot of poisonous thoughts, various kinds of classical accomplishments couldn't be ignored. For example, painting, playing the zither, calligraphy. In his previous life, if he could paint a landscape painting, he would definitely be happy for 3 days. Now, his level could only be said to be high, very high. Playing the zither and calligraphy were generally the same. In his previous life, if he could play the zither or write a mouse song, he would definitely think that it was one of the coolest things in the world. Now, he could do it. In the heavenly spirit world, in the central continent, this was a completely different world. These weren't very important, but it was very satisfying. Just imagining that he would be happy for half a day if he could transmigrate to the world of his previous life and have such skills. The pretty boy Wei Xian and Xia Wanjin left with Chu Yang. The two of them were very likely to be suspected of being Song Deming, so he separated from the two halfway. Xia Wanjin went first, and it was natural for him to meet up with Chu Yang in Taijing City later, because the two of them already knew each other in the eastern continent. As for the gigolo Wei Xian, it was slightly troublesome, but it was not that there was no way, because he also had to participate in the imperial examinations. Therefore, it wasn't impossible for him to meet Chu Yang in Taijing City. However, it had to be widely known to raise suspicions. It was necessary to do so. They might even meet Rui Zi in Taijing City. If the 4 people from the Sage Monarch Academy gathered together, the 3 of them would have the feeling that Song Deming was on the verge of appearing. The news of Chu Yang's arrival in Taijing City spread like wildfire in Taijing City. The credit for this was naturally due to the letter he had written to Shangguan Lan, and even more so to the parrot. The parrot felt that this matter was not big enough for it to make a dazzling appearance. When it heard the news from Shangguan Lan that Chu Yang was coming, it was very excited, and used this excitement to inform Shangguan Can was an eyesore to the parrot. Unfortunately, it was no match for Shangguan Can otherwise, Shangguan Can would have been taught a good lesson. It couldn't do anything to Shangguan Can, so it could only place its hopes on Chu Hang. In its opinion, Chu Hang was a bottomless pit. No matter who you were, as long as you fell into the pit called Chu Hang, there would be no sound at all. As for how the news spread from Shangguan Can, it wasn't very clear. In the end, the 6 young masters of Taijing City and the people of Taijing City all knew that the arrogant guy called Chu Yang would soon come to Taijing City to participate in the imperial examinations. Chapter 2463. Chu Yang was the hottest of the hottest. Many people who wanted to become famous were dissatisfied and angry. The situation became more and more intense. Even though Chu Yang was very famous, such as angrily rebuking the Pacification King and ridiculing the Zhongzhou Fighting King for being illiterate, unable to speak or count, many people were still not convinced. Instead, it made them even angrier, causing Chu Yang's popularity to soar. Duke Ju's residence was generally aware of all this, especially one person, Shangguan Can. At this moment, Shangguan Can was painting a picture of Granny Liu entering the Grand View Garden. However, the Grand View Garden in the picture was much more magnificent and majestic than the Grand View Garden, because the Grand View Garden in the picture was Taijing City. The grandeur and prosperity of Taijing City were all vivid on the paper. It was a picture of a prosperous age. The people in the picture were almost like a Qingming riverside painting. All kinds of people were so vivid and lifelike, as if they were about to walk out of the picture. However, there was a big flaw in the picture. There was a pile of excrement in the picture, a steaming pile of excrement. The pile of excrement showed all kinds of exaggerated and shocked expressions, as if the pile of excrement was completely shocked by the picture in front of it. There were people who looked like Granny Liu in the picture, but if Taijing City was a Grandview garden, then Granny Liu was definitely not Granny Liu, but the steaming pile of excrement. No matter how ugly it was not enough to describe Chu Yang in Shangguan Can's mind. He thought for a long time, and only the pile of excrement matched the description. Even so, he still thought that he had overestimated Chu Yang. Chu Yang was worse than excrement. Therefore, what was depicted in this painting could be said to be a pile of shit entering the city. The picture was almost finished. At this moment, a servant of the same age as Shangguan Can, who was dressed very luxuriously, came in carefully, as if he had sneaked into the enemy's camp. When he realized that he had been discovered by Shangguan Can, he put on a flattering smile and bowed, greeting Shangguan Can respectfully, "Young master." This person seemed to have no expression, no backbone, a typical lowly and extremely flattering villain. But if you think so, then you are greatly mistaken. He was only like this when he was with Shangguan Can outside. He was like a crab walking sideways. He was even more of a boss than a boss. Everyone who saw him would have to call him Master Leopard. On the outside, Shangguan Bao was a wolf, a tiger, and a leopard. However, beside Shangguan Can, he was a loyal dog. He was known by everyone in Taijing as Lord Leopard. Of course, Shangguan Can knew about this, but he didn't mind. "How's the thing I asked you to do coming along?" Shangguan Can asked as he painted. "Hehe, young master, you don't have to worry about me," Shangguan Bao said proudly. "Right now, the situation in Taijing is very chaotic. As long as the country bumpkins among country bumpkins come, they will probably be scared out of their wits and directly die." After saying that, he looked at Shangguan Can's painting and added, "Young master, I think that you should paint a picture of the country bumpkins who are scared out of their wits. You think too highly of that pile of excrement." Shangguan Can revealed his white teeth and suddenly laughed sinisterly, causing Shangguan Bao to shiver uncontrollably. "Leopard, if you want to kill a person, do you want to kill him with a knife or kill him for 3 days and 3 nights? Do you think it will be more painful for him? Cruel, too cruel. Tyrannical, too cruel." Shangguan Bao broke out in cold sweat and began to sympathize with that country bumpkin called Chu Yang. His master was more evil than the devil when it came to his young miss. If this continued, he felt that the 5 young masters of Taijing City would all be dealt with by his master. Chapter 2464. Of course it's the latter. That will definitely make that country bumpkin beg for death. He will deeply regret his ignorance and cry bitterly, kneel down and beg for mercy. Shangguan Bao said very cleverly. He also thought that this was the truth, a truth that would appear very soon. "Country bumpkin, you toad wants to eat swan meat. Of all swans, you actually want to eat the swan of 9th Duke's residence. Aren't you looking for the path to the 18th level of hell?" After saying that, he shook his head again and again in his heart. He felt that the country bumpkin called Chu Yang was more and more pitiful, too pitiful. "Go and tell those 5 bastards." Shangguan Can did not care about Shangguan Bao's answer and directly ordered, "Go and tell them that this time, I will play by myself. If they dare to stretch out their paws, I will definitely make them very satisfied." Shangguan Bao could not help but break out in cold sweat again. If those 5 bastards said that, he would probably lose half his life. "Yes, young master." But he had no choice but to agree. "Look at this. What do you think?" Shangguan Can's hand moved slightly, and with a swoosh, a piece of paper fell into Shangguan Bao's hand. If it was a drawing of a piece of shit entering the city, then the content of the paper was how to make things difficult for this piece of shit. Beauty's poem. Shangguan Bao only took a glance and exclaimed, "Young master is brilliant, really brilliant. Beauty's poem. If that country bumpkin doesn't do well, young miss will definitely be unhappy. Then, that country bumpkin will be greatly discounted in young miss's heart." Shangguan Can smiled. He already got the answer. When Shangguan Bao saw the 3 words Beauty's poem, he knew that it must be written for his sister. That piece of shit should also be able to think of it. In fact, he was really worried about that piece of shit's intelligence. As for such a test, Shangwon felt that it was very ingenious, and there were also various mechanisms. Beauty's poem, especially with a peerless beauty like his sister as the target, was really too difficult to write. Anyway, he could not find any words to describe it, so it was definitely not easy to come up with such a satisfying poem. What Shangwon Bao said was also true. In the words of that lousy parrot, there would be no harm if there was no comparison. That piece of shit could make a poem, but if someone could make a better poem, it would pale in comparison. Of course, there were other difficulties as well. For example, the last 2 stages were equally difficult. It was already difficult for that pile of shit to compose a beauty's poem, let alone 3 in a row. Furthermore, after these 3 tests, Shangwon had also prepared a series of humiliations and difficulties. If Chu Yang saw this, he would definitely think that this was more difficult than Tang Seng's journey to the west, especially when he didn't have Sun Wukong by his side. Young master, as long as we pass 3 tests, that country bumpkin will be defeated. Why do we need to design so much? Shangwon Bao sympathized with Chu Yang even more. He could not help but try to reduce the difficulty for him. You can't do things more than 3 times. 3 tests are enough, so I'll lose face if there are too many. Is that what you mean? Shangwon suddenly laughed coldly, scaring Shangwon Bao to death. He hurriedly said, "That's exactly what I meant. Young master, there's no need to lower yourself. You don't understand. This is to kill the chicken to warn the monkey." Shangwon suddenly stopped painting and said coldly, "I want to tell everyone in the world that if they are not good enough, they should never have wishful thinking. Otherwise, they will end up like this pile of shit." After a pause, he continued, "I'm also warning those 5 dogs to be more careful of their dog paws." The 6 young masters of Tai capital were all very amazing, and none of them were extraordinary. Shangwon Bao felt that 5 of them were very good, so he really did not understand his master's strength. However, this was not a problem that he needed to think about. What he needed to think about now was whether there was anything wrong with Shangwon Can's plan. Chapter 2465. A pond sealed by willows. Who in Grand Capital City and the Central Plains didn't know of such an absolute? Such an absolute suddenly appeared in Shangwon Bao's mind, and he instantly had a bad feeling. His master seemed to be kicking a knife. That country bumpkin's attainments in literary arts had suppressed and humiliated the entire Central Plains. What he deeply felt was that Duke Ju seemed to be cursing his mother, while his master's father was laughing non-stop for 3 days. Even though he was beaten up by Duke Ju time and time again, he was still laughing non-stop. How could this work? Shangwon Bao expressed his doubts, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. He could only beat around the bush and say, "Young master, that lousy parrot seems to have been dressed in flowery clothes again." In other words, it definitely wasn't the first one. As for wearing flowery clothes, it seemed to be the complete opposite of Chu Yang's practice of stripping, plucking, and hanging to dry. However, the parrot would rather be stripped, plucked, and hung to dry than wear flowery clothes. Because it was too miserable, too miserable. On such a hot day, its cultivation was sealed, and it had to wear layers and layers of clothes prepared for birds. Under these layers and layers, even a person would grow heat rashes. Even if it was a bird, it definitely did not feel good, but it could not bear it. Furthermore, that wasn't all. The parrot would wear layer after layer of flowery clothes, and in the end, it would turn into a mountain of clothes. Inside, it was like being confined in the depths of tens of thousands of layers of hell. After the parrot suffered once, it suddenly felt that reading, writing, composing poems, and painting was a very happy and joyful thing. Mitch, that lousy bird. Shangwon couldn't help but sneer coldly. It's really confident in that pile of shit. It actually deliberately leaked the news to me so that that pile of shit would screw me over. After a pause, he became furious. Elder sister is really obsessed with that pile of shit. She actually punished that lousy bird so viciously. Suddenly, he couldn't help but shudder. Wearing clothes wasn't something that only the parrot enjoyed, he was also a part of it. Ever since his elder sister returned from the Eastern Plains, she changed a lot. He didn't know why she would think of such a vicious method to torture him to the point that he didn't dare to cause trouble easily. Damn it. This time, I'm going to make you wear flowery clothes too. Shangwon can recalled that after his cultivation was sealed, he had to wear layers and layers of clothes. In the end, he was even more miserable than the parrot. Suddenly, he felt resentful again. Wearing flowery clothes. Shangwon Bao couldn't help but shudder. He had also experienced it. Fortunately, he had begged for mercy in time. What happened that day was still vivid in his mind, as if it had happened yesterday. His master had been dressed in flowery clothes, but he didn't think much of it. It was just wearing clothes like a mountain, so what was the point of taking it seriously? Therefore, when he revealed such an intention, his master gave him a flowery robe to wear. He quickly realized how terrifying it was. Not only did he get rashes all over his body, but the feeling of being confined was enough to drive him crazy. He couldn't hold on for a single day, while the parrot and its master both lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. It was extremely miserable. Young master, do you have any other orders? If not, I'll go and complete the mission you gave me. Shangwon Bao was afraid that his master would think of his miserable past and put flowery clothes on him on a whim, so he immediately wanted to escape. Go. Yes, young master. Shangwon Bao walked carefully for a while, then rushed out with a whoosh. When he reached a safe place, he couldn't help but let out a long breath and said with lingering fear, "You scared me to death." Then, he complained, "I don't know where Miss Lan learned how to wear flowery clothes. It's really killing me." Chapter 2466. Duke Ju and Shangwon Lan's parents were aware of Shangwon Can's actions, but they didn't stop him. It wasn't going to be easy for Chu Yang to marry their baby. In Taijing City, other than Shangwon Can, the rest of the 6 young masters were aware of the situation. Shangwon Can had specially sent Shangwon Bao to inform them not to add to Chu Yang's burden and ruin Chu Yang's life. They only snorted coldly and replied, "Shangwon Can, don't throw away the face of our Tai capital." Shangwon Can sneered when he heard this. The people of Taijing City were well informed. They were all aware of the situation and started discussing it. Some busybodies even sent people to guard the city gates and report back immediately if anything happened. It could be said that everyone in Taijing City knew that a good show was about to take place and the actors were Chu Yang and Shangwon Can. The background of this show was complicated and involved a lot of people. Taijing City's #1 talented woman, Shangwon Lan, and the 6 young masters were all involved. The most important character in the play, Chu Yang, was also extremely interesting. He ridiculed the people of the central continent for being illiterate, unable to count, and even unable to speak the human language. His appearance in itself was the greatest news, the greatest thing. As a result, the magistrate of Taijing City had no choice but to send more soldiers to stabilize the security of Taijing City. The magistrate of Taijing City was worried that something like this would happen during the imperial examinations. Because it involved too many areas and there were too many dragons and sharks in Taijing City, as well as all kinds of monsters, he was unable to do anything. Thus, he had no choice but to pay a visit to Duke Ju's residence, Qi residence, Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu residence. The storm was coming and the wind was blowing. On the second day after leaving St. Monic Academy, Chu Yang was in a small town 10 miles away from Taijing City. He knew everything that was going on in Taijing City. Xie Wanjin, the spy, had delivered the news in great detail. "The gambling has started. Let's count the money until our hands go numb." On the afternoon of the 3rd day, he received another message from Xie Wanjin. It sounded casual but it wasn't. At least, he wasn't relaxed at all. If the Xie family stood on Chu Yang's side in Taijing City, the consequences would be unimaginable. Wang, Xie, Chen, Wu, and King Qi's residence would definitely suppress the Xie family. Therefore, Xie Wanjin didn't hide anything from Chu Yang. He didn't have the power to hide anything from him because this matter concerned the life and death of the Xie family. Xie Wanjin's original plan was to get the Xie family to expel him from the family. However, they didn't do so in the end because they believed that Chu Yang would rise. Chu Yang could rise. Even if the Xia clan had completely declined because they stood on Chu Yang's side, the Xia clan would definitely regain its former glory with Chu Yang's rise. Tus to Chu Yang's had tus decision, whose tus on's side was tus to s have tus ss the decision. STSSTS. This naturally put a burden on him. Xia Wanjin had thought of the worst-case scenario. The Xia family's business was being squeezed by the major powers in Taijing City, so he had to get some money to support it. In order to get this little bit of money, Xia Wanjin made a lot of money. He planned to use Chu Yang to pull Wang, Xie, Chen Wu, as well as Qi King Manor and the other 5 families into the gambling house, making them bleed a lot. Of course, the only one who could do this was Chu Yang. Chapter 2467. Then I'll have to play a good game. Chu Yang went through the situation in his mind and immediately rode on a donkey that he had specially bought. He hummed a tune as he headed towards Taijing City. Taijing City was a no-fly zone. The reason why Chu Yang was so fond of the donkey was because the donkey from the Sage Monarch College was in the water. If the donkey knew about this, it would definitely give Chu Yang 2 hooves. In the distance, the mountain-like city gate of Taijing City was imprinted in his eyes. The entire Taijing City was like a gigantic mountain range that was unfathomably large. Tai capital city was indeed a very big city. It was very visually stunning. But for Chu Yang, it was nothing much after looking at it for a while. After about an hour, he finally arrived at the east gate of Taijing City. He followed the crowd and slowly entered the city. He was very far away from the city gate. He could see that there were many people at the gate and he could hear many people talking about him. He immediately felt that the situation in Taijing City described in Xia Wanjin's letter was indeed very lively. It was countless times more lively than the upcoming imperial examinations. As for these many people, Chu Yang soon had a general understanding of them. Many of them were waiting here. They would immediately send the news back as soon as he arrived. However, although they were lively, they were very slow. After Chu Yang safely entered the city, not a single person noticed. They were very negligent and Chu Yang was very dissatisfied. He had no choice but to stop. He cupped his fists and said, "Everyone, I'm Chu Yang from the Eastern Wasteland. I'm here. Please pay attention to your eyes. I won't be responsible if you're blinded." Boom. As soon as the 2 words Chu Yang came out, there was an uproar at the city gate. An earth-shattering clamor erupted. Many people were in disbelief. What did I just hear? Chu Yang? Did I hear wrongly? Did I hear wrongly? That Chu Yang actually dared to come? That's impossible, right? It's such a small probability thing. Did it really happen? Is that Chu Yang really that stupid? He actually came here to throw his life away. That's a country bumpkin among country bumpkins. He's extremely arrogant. That's possible. Amidst the exclamations of many people, many gazes swept over with a whoosh. They immediately saw a smiling face that was exactly the same as the person in the portrait in their hands. Their bodies couldn't help but tremble as they cried out in shock. It's Chu Yang. He actually came. He actually came. How did he get there? Why didn't I notice anything? His methods are truly impressive. There are so many people, yet none of them were able to discover him. If he doesn't say anything, who will know? Some people cried out in surprise, some were stunned, but there were also people giving orders. Quick, quick, send the news back. That Chu Yang is here. He has already entered the city through the east gate. This group of people was not small in number. Once they moved, the scene became even more chaotic. Chu Yang stopped them and said with a smile, "Everyone, please calm down. If you leave now, I'm afraid you will miss the most dazzling scene. Not only will you regret it for the rest of your life, but you will also be beaten to death by your masters. So, this marshal asks you to think twice." These words were really effective. Those people all froze. Those who entered the city all stopped in their tracks. At this moment, the guards at the city gate all stared blankly at Chu Yang, as if they were looking at something extremely shocking. "Thank you, everyone, for giving me face." Chu Yang smiled and cupped his fists at the crowd. In order to express my gratitude, this marshal intends to tell you a story. It's very exciting. Please enjoy it. Story. What the hell? Everyone couldn't help but be confused. What was Chu Yang's intention? Was it a joke or something else? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,